Good afternoon. It is now 4:30 PM and the budget work session and work session meeting is now in session for the Bel Air Board of Town Commissioners for May the 13th, 2025. And I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Rutledge.
Here.
Commissioner Chismar.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Here.
And Commissioner Chance did let us know she couldn't be with us this evening. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion of this evening's agenda? No? Mr. Krantz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For approval of this evening's agenda, May 13th, 2025, Commissioner Rutledge,
Aye.
Commissioner Chismar,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
and Chair Edding.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And first up, we have the Town Administrator's Report. Eddie?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Actually, for this afternoon, I have no report.
Well, that is moving us along nicely. Thank you. The tentative agenda for our town meeting on Monday, May the 19th, which will be here in Town Hall at 7 p.m. First, we'll have a presentation, the introduction of Miss Bel Air, Kyla Girardello. Anybody need to tell us anything in advance about that? All right, we're looking forward to meeting her. And the proclamation for Historic Preservation Month will also be presented that evening, along with the Historic Preservation Commission's poster contest results, which I know we're all looking forward to. Anyone need to comment on those three items? All right. We will also have on Monday the public hearing for Resolution 1250-25, the fiscal year 2026 tentative budget. And under new business, we will then have the Resolution 1252-25 for the fiscal year 2026 final budget. I know we'll be looking at the budget in greater detail later in the meeting, so anyone have anything to mention? Okay, at this point. Then we will also do the street resurfacing contract. Mr. Klein?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our annual street resurfacing contract that we do each year. This year, we have a contract not to exceed $410,000, which was the amount that was budgeted in the FY25 budget for curb and gutter repairs, street construction, and curb ramp construction. The streets that we're planning to resurface are Ellendale Street from Rock Spring Avenue to Franklin Street, Roland Avenue from Hall Street to Howard Street, Gordon Street from Bond Street to William Street, Atwood Road from Catherine Street through Shamrock Road, Broadway from Ardmore Way to Shamrock, South Shamrock Road from East Churchville to Lee Way, and South Reed Street from Bolton Street to Thomas Street. In addition, we're going to be paving the parking lot and basketball court at the Plumtree Park for that amount. We received 6 bids for the contract, and the low bidder is going to be the American Asphalt Company out of Baltimore. Is there any questions?
Not for me.
Yes, I was just down Roland Avenue the other day, and I noticed a lot of it's already cut up and there's been a lot of digging or whatever. Is that part that's going to be resurfaced?
That's going to be resurfaced. It's part of a water line or gas line replacement project that's being done right now for a utility project. Once that's finished, we'll let the patches settle for a little bit and then resurface it. But that's being done as a utility right now, not
Right,
by the town.
I was going to say the utility should be repaving that, correct?
They just do the patch part.
The patch part?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one on Robinson Street, they've done enough digging up of the road where we're requiring that they resurface the entire street. But that's on them. It's not a part of this contract.
Okay. I was going to say it was pretty, well, Eddie, it's kind of near your house. It's pretty dug up, that section between Hall Street and, was it Howard? On Roland there. There was a lot of dug up spaces. I just thought maybe they would resurface that themselves.
I'll definitely look into that,
Okay.
sir, for you and just see how we stand on that. Because it usually is about what type of percentage of are they digging up before we require them to do the entire street.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Anything further for Steve on the resurfacing? All right. Next, we have the Plumtree Park Playground resurfacing contract, which I assume is different than just paving the park.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah,
Kevin.
Plumtree Park is reaching the end of the improvements that were doing to the park. One of the things that was missed when we when we contracted with Cunningham Recreation to provide new play surface for the playgrounds was they only provided it for one of the playgrounds, not both of the playgrounds. So the 6 to 12-year-old larger playground for the older kids has been done and it's finalized. The smaller kids, the 2 to 5-year-olds, that one was not done. It wasn't included in their original contract. So we're having to come back in front of you to get approval for that. And that total is $29,467. That includes digging out the entire thing, putting in new geotech fabric, and putting in engineered wood fiber. One thing that we are waiting on is a revised quote to make sure that they are adhering to the piggyback contract that they're obligated to use. So I'm hoping to get that this week. That if we don't get it, then it'll be taken off of the agenda for next Monday.
Any questions for Kevin?
Well, or Lisa, since it wasn't in the budget from last year.
No, it's in the budget.
It was in the budget, it was just the contract. The amount was set aside, but the contract only covered
Yes.
one of the 2 play areas.
Yes, we're actually in pretty
Okay.
good shape to hit the budget right on the nose, but when they completed it, they said, we're all done, and we said, no, you're not, you still need to do more work, and that is why we're coming back in front of you.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it was in this year's budget.
Yes.
Good for us on that one. All right, next we will have appointments to the Appearance and Beautification Committee, which we will discuss later in closed session. And now we arrive at the Commissioners' Liaison Reports. The Tree Committee has not met, will be meeting tomorrow, actually, but hasn't met since March, so no report on them.
Appearance and Beautification Committee met last night. Notable happening to report is that they elected new officers for the next year. So I'd like to congratulate Elaine Millard as the new chair. She was formerly the vice chair and is the mastermind behind the wildly successful Garden Mart, which was another huge success for them last Friday in the Armory, and continues to grow and bring more people in next year. And their newly elected vice chair is Peg Lucas, who we all know very well and needs no introduction. So I'm very much looking forward to Elaine and Peg taking over that leadership there. We have a great group. Hopefully we'll have 2 more new great additions to that committee, and it is growing, and they have a lot of exciting plans for the coming year, making sure Bel Air continues to be beautiful. And ECDC will meet on Thursday.
Thank you for that update. Commissioner Chismar, anything?
No, I did not have, I
Very
think,
good, because
I
you have
think
been
Kevin
away for a
reported out
while.
on the Planning Commission last work session, right? Or did,
The upcoming agenda for Planning Commission is confirmed one item, which is Hartford Mall Phase 3. And we expect a revision from the one we looked at last month, which is the 102 North Bond Street.
right.
That was the nail salon and restaurant.
And
Yes.
restaurant.
Yes, and that's, we expect that submission day after tomorrow.
All right, thank you so much. Commissioner Rutledge, anything to update us on Historic Pres?
I do not.
All right, thank you. And next, we will have the staffing update. Michael?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We currently have 2 positions posted that we're actively requesting applicants for. A laborer position. We had some turnover, and as a result, we posted the job just a few days ago. We have more than several applicants already, so that's a pretty good thing, and interviews will be starting shortly. And we are currently interviewing for the part-time procurement position. That's all we have posted at the moment. As far as upcoming vacancies on appointed officials, boards, committees, and commissions, we have a vacancy coming up in July for the Board of Ethics, and we'll have a vacancy coming up on the Board of Building Appeals in August, which we hopefully Greg Adolph will be willing to serve again. But that's all I have to report at this moment.
And on the Board of Ethics did Sue say she was not going to serve again?
She is not going
Okay.
to serve again.
Regarding the Board of Building Appeals, I also hope Mr. Adolph steps in. I did have someone reach out to me to say that if a vacancy ever occurred, he'd be interested in that board. I did tell him they've never met, and that made him even more interested in the position. So we do have a backup plan, but we hope that, Greg stays.
And so we need to put on our thinking caps as far as Board of Ethics and, all right. I'm sorry, I know we all received a newly issued calendar this evening, so if anybody notices anything missing or anything on the wrong date, let Mike, Ruth, or Eddie know, and we'll get it moved around. It looks fairly accurate is what I can see. All right, so if there are no further comments about the calendar, we'll move on to miscellaneous, where we won't be moving as quickly as we have been. Because the first item is discuss the short-term rentals, and I think Commissioner Rutledge will let you begin.
Yeah, so we had a draft, and I shared out, a draft working piece of legislation, on that, and we had some discussion, about the concepts that I'd floated on the allowing a certain fairly restricted and limited right to be able to have short-term rentals in the R districts, and a more robust right, also subject to some pretty careful regulatory review on the business districts. So, and I did ask that, and the most recent draft added the was it the MO?
M1.
M1, the M1 district as well to the B districts as being treated in the same context as that. So just looking for, I wanted to make sure it was on the work session so we could continue, discussions and feedback. We've been talking about this off and on for some time, and
Well, I'm going to start with, I know Mr. Payne has emailed, I think he may have emailed all of us, but I'm not sure everyone got it. He's raised some interesting questions, and I'm interested in the answers. So, why, and of course, to start off, I'm not in favor of short-term rentals in the residential areas, but one of his questions was, why limit it to 500 square feet?
yeah, well, my thinking on that is the limitation on square feet coincides directly with the owner being on site, and so it doesn't slink into, a whole house rental where the owner slips out. If a person knows that only a very small portion of their home is being rented, the likelihood that they'll actually keep their promise and their commitment under their license to be on site makes that, in my view, more likely to happen as a pragmatic matter. So that allows, it depends upon the size of bedrooms, but that 500 square feet is a pretty significant amount of square footage for a couple of rooms there, for that. So that was my thinking on why I thought that was a good number. Maybe a starting point, but a good number. And that's my thinking is, a person's less likely to bug out and say, oh yeah, I'm on site.
Right.
If only a small portion of their home is actually being utilized for the short-term rental.
Right. They're not in a bedroom in the house and renting out the whole house. They're limited to 500 square feet, like a basement apartment or something like that.
Right, whatever, yeah.
Or an
whatever.
addition that has
Yeah.
a separate living facility. He also says, are homeowners in R1 districts allowed to share a house or rent rooms for income? And I have no idea. I mean, I guess I could share a house with anybody I wanted, but I don't know about renting rooms for income. Does that fall into like
Yes.
boarding houses?
No, the definition of family in the town of Bel Air and in most municipalities is no more than 3 unrelated persons living in a single domicile. And that accounts for people with roommates, people who are renting
Right.
out one of their bedrooms. The limitation there is they cannot have their own cooking facilities. They cannot have their own kitchen. They have to have communal
So you're
meals.
truly sharing your house. Somebody's
Right.
got in a 3-bedroom house, somebody's got a bedroom, owner lives in a bedroom, but they use the kitchen
Correct.
and share that.
Living area, yeah.
And how do we enforce that? I mean, you know,
Oh,
is
it's
that
almost impossible to
right?
enforce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe a more pointed question: how often do you review those instances of people who are renting? I mean, does that ever come across your desk? to
Yes,
review?
it actually came across several times about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And that's when a neighbor sees 3 or 4 or 5 cars
Sure.
parked out in front of a particular residence. And then we knock on the door. Now, of course, if the resident does not want us in there, then we can't go in there. But we've had several different opportunities where we ask and we'll talk to people and we'll say, are you living here? Where are you living? Or do you have, your own kitchen and things like that? But again, they don't have to answer those questions. Now, if they're asking for improvements, some kind of building permit is needed, then yes, we do have the ability to go on premises and inspect. I think Steve's had a couple of those where someone has put is building out their basement. And so there you're looking at egress issues, things like that.
Thank you.
So, yeah, a couple questions I had on this, Jim, is that, I know there's a definition of ADUs in our code, okay, but can ADUs be used, I mean, we're not looking at ADUs being used as STRs. Or can be used, in other words, would an owner use the ADU and then rent out the rest of the house? Rent out the house? I mean, I don't see anything in here that prevents that.
No, I think
Or
that'd be.
renting out the ADU, which I thought ADUs were only for caregivers and what was,
They're basically for extended family of the
primary
person in
owner.
the principal residence. So
Right.
that almost precludes the STRs at that point. It could be that if it was desired, is to add that to either the definition of ADUs or
or the definition of an
STRs.
STR,
Yeah.
right, in there.
to say that you can't have both. And we would never approve both.
Yeah, you see, I don't think we need to change the definition. I don't think the solution is changing the definition of the STR itself, Steve. I think what it is, this comes by special exception, and there's gonna have to be, there's gonna be specific review of the area of the house that's gonna be approved. There's also gonna, and that will
Okay.
catch whether or not they're trying to peel out the ADU as a separate thing or not. That physical review as well as safety,
Okay.
fire, et cetera, is all gonna be carefully reviewed as part of the special exception.
Would it be worthwhile to, the prohibition against a commercial use of the ADU pretty much already exists in the ADU side of the code because it's meant for extended family. Would it be worthwhile to reinforce that prohibition on this side of the code and say an STR may not be housed within an ADU?
I wouldn't have any objection to that.
Yeah.
As far as the ADU being used for commercial purposes or not, clearly there's cost sharing arrangements with family members and extended family members
Sure.
and all human, typical American family relationship and housing. So, I would prefer.
Depends on the word commercial. How you-
Right, so I wouldn't
How
want
far
to
do you
venture
stretch
down that road. I
Sure,
think it would be
sure.
better to say that, something approved as an ADU could not be used as an SD.
Sure.
That would be, I think appropriate in the R district.
Okay, and then under the, I guess it's under the, I think it's not the definitions, I guess it's in the performance standards? Yeah, the performance standards, where you have the short-term rentals, subparagraph 1B. When it says the principal dwelling must be owner occupied,
Right.
does that mean that the dwelling has to be the principal residence of the owner? Somebody can own multiple homes.
Right.
But they've got to be in it. occupied. That's the main key for me.
Yeah.
They've got to be on site.
The
And
owner
so-
or
The owner.
the owner?
The owner has to be on site.
Yeah, that would be the case in this. I
We
don't
could say
think
owner occupied and
Owner
on site.
occupied by,
Well-
almost by deferral says that it's gonna be his principal or her principal residence.
That's,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, that's what I'm asking the question.
Mhm.
Legally, does
No,
that
those are
mean,
interesting questions.
does that mean the
Yeah, I-
primary, in other words, their driver's license has that address as their
Right.
home? Their voter registration is that address.
Mhm.
Because that's what we're really intending, and I'm just trying to
Well,
look at other loopholes, you know,
my
ways that,
intent is not necessarily that they didn't make a tax election to live in Florida 6 months and 1 day of the year. My intention is, because I
Right.
wouldn't care whether they're out of state or not. My intention is they're the owner and they're on site.
And I think that language is a little
On-site, and we could
unclear.
we could add something for on-site,
Mhm.
to make that.
This to me says,
Because that was
I mean,
my
you do-
intention, was
right, I mean, you do
on-site.
have owner occupied.
Yes, we have owner
Which
occupied,
means-
we could strengthen
Does-
that. We could
okay.
say owner occupied and on-site, during the use.
Right.
Because that's the intent. The intent is the fact that you don't want, and the person whose name's on the dotted line on the license in the R districts to be out of pocket when a complaint arises and Chief Moore has to send somebody over to check out the party, and where's the owner? And the owner's like nowhere to be found. And if not, then he would be able to report that back, to Kevin's department, and they know that, okay, perhaps, a license violation has occurred. Because, they can lose their license for violating these terms. So that was my intent when I looked at it, but it's an excellent point. I don't want to, I don't think delving into whether they've got, whether they spend most of their time in the winter time, maybe they're here in the summer. If they're on site, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, because I thought it was more to help, well, you didn't want to have homes being turned into a business for STRs, that's all. And that's why I was saying if it's their primary residence, then they're not going to have a slew of them
Mhm.
throughout the town, that's all.
Well,
By saying primary residence, then.
would you be interested in supporting the STR in the R district if that?
I don't know, I'm still out
provision
on
was
that,
there?
because I still have a lot of questions and other things about licenses and what's the criteria for revocation. I mean, I think you have to have all those procedures laid out, I think, before we pass this, because what's a license consist of? Do we have
Yeah.
a license form? What are the criteria? And then revocation, we just can't say they can be revocated, they can be revoked, the license, but what's the criteria for revoking? It can't be arbitrary, because, is it 3 offenses of noise? I mean, there's got to be, we got to have some guidelines as to when do you have the right to revoke?
We do have guidelines that I haven't given out yet, because I was waiting to see where you were headed, but I can have those available for Mr. Rutledge.
Yeah,
to take a look
I
at.
think my main question for you, Steve, is, are you rolling through a list of, problems and horribles here to try to build a case against voting in favor of the R district, or are you sincerely considering voting in favor of the R district?
Right now I'm tending not to, but I see some of these issues, even if it isn't in the R district.
Yeah.
The license and the revocation criteria are still something for the commercial district, the B and the M.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, that's still, to me, an issue that has to be addressed, I think, because I think you have to, if we do pass anything, it has to be part of a whole package. All that has to be, we need to see all of that, I think. I want to see all of that before I vote.
And are the guidelines that you're talking about, Kevin, are those just generally applicable about when the town issues a license, or are those specific?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
So we don't need to
there's-
reinvent the
There's
wheel.
standardized due
I mean,
process for license
Well,
revocations
okay.
already built into the code.
Where are those? I'd like to
I
take, do you know
can
where they are?
pass those out or email those to everyone. I just was
Okay. No, I
was waiting
understand.
to see what
Right,
direction
we're
you
going.
were
Yeah, I
headed.
didn't ask him to
Right.
go into that detail yet,
Okay.
because I realized that there might not be 3 votes to approve this in the R district.
Okay.
And so, really, instead of getting into, I mean, I appreciate that, and, you know, but I'm just saying, really, the key is whether or not, you know, you think it's appropriate and fair to the homeowners and fair to the community to allow some limited SDR in the residential district. That's like the core question.
Right.
Which is why I put it back on the work session, to sort of try to get, you know, more of a feel on this before
Right.
we spend a lot of staff time running down rabbit holes if there's an alignment of 3 against it.
Okay.
I've
No, I
got-
understand what you're saying, yeah.
I've got just an optional language here, and goes back to your first item. The property owner must be on site while the short-term rental is occupied. That gets past, you know, as long as they're there,
Yeah,
while the
right.
use is in operation.
That
Kind
sounds
of.
good. Do you think that solves that problem, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it had it in there before. I was just wondering if it had to be their
I
primary
think that language
residence.
is much better
But it
than
is
the
more-
current language, because I think it could be interpreted to mean that it's, you know, it's my home and it is, you know, owner occupied under like the tax and assessments, but I might not be there while
Be on
somebody's
vacation.
using it, so, you know, I like the more specific language to achieve your end, which I know is your goal. And I don't think that just saying owner occupied is sufficient to, you know, be specific enough to preclude any other interpretations of that language.
What I can do is send out by email some of these other documents, once you've looked at them and you're okay, and then we'll go from there.
And it's a little unfortunate that we don't have Commissioner Chance here, because I can't remember what her feelings were on this topic.
I don't, yeah.
And it might become important. So,
I mean, I've talked to a few people in town, some of the residents. I'd like to talk to some more about what their feelings are and all that on this, you know, before I come down with, on the residential sections. I mean, I'm okay with the Bs and the M. I think that's fine, okay. And in light of that, also, may want to look at, and Kevin, I don't know if this is appropriate, that Chapter 252 requirements for hotel, motel, and boarding houses, where it says what the registration requirements are. So I'm wondering if that is appropriate for short-term rentals.
We can look at that.
Yeah.
Chapter
Yeah,
252.
okay.
In the residential or in all districts?
In all districts. It's, you know, it's like you're going to a hotel, you gotta show your ID, you gotta get their address or home address. You know, we're doing it for any hotel, motel, or boarding house, so are we putting short-term rentals kind of in that same thing? So why wouldn't that chapter also be applicable?
Yeah, I don't know enough about that chapter, but
Right.
it's, as long as it doesn't require somebody to sort of like be there as the check-in person, I don't want any, I wouldn't
Yeah.
want, you know, in the B
Right.
districts, you know, somebody's got a short-term rental above a, you know, an office or whatever, to actually like be there like a motel.
Right, okay, well then that's, you know, I think, well, that's something to think about. I mean, I was always thinking that these would always be somebody there, like I was thinking about the residential, but it's owner occupied, but you're right, in the B sections.
In the B section,
we don't- we
I'm
don't-
saying
that's-
no.
Don't have to be.
No, I'm
They
not
just have to be
requiring.
30 minutes away, I think
Correct.
you had in the requirements. So we've got to see if that's a burden that, what they require. It may only just be the you know, it's just a registration.
know.
Who are you, and
Right.
I think Commissioner
name,
Rutledge,
address, and blah, blah.
you did have some restrictions on how far away the responsible party
That's
can
correct.
be. Right, okay.
Half
So it's,
hour, yeah.
so it's not like, you know, hanging out in the wind.
So, right, not being in Florida.
Right. Not being in Florida.
Most of those are, yeah, I mean, we've done several Airbnbs where you have to register a lot of your information before you can even get directions to where it's at, you know, so.
Correct.
I think it may be that a lot of those questions are taken care of by the company, because they have a liability issue too. I mean, they certainly don't want, you know, somebody with ill intent showing up in one of the properties that they are putting out on their website, because then, you know, that property owner may not return to them for business. So I think in the commercial districts, it is certainly a commercial decision, and I would be interested in learning more about what safeguards the major companies have for that, and how that can be woven in. Because you're right to point out that in a hotel, a motel, you've got a company which is ultimately in charge of the building, in charge of security, in charge of guest behavior, and they do that because they know if they don't, they got a business. So I'd be interested in looking into that.
But I don't think you need to be a short-term rental operator. I don't think you need to go with the normal Airbnb, VRBO, whatever type
Oh, yeah.
company. You could advertise on your own.
That was
I
going to be
mean,
my
you know,
comment.
so it's,
Certainly.
I understand what you
certainly,
mean
yeah.
about it's, with the company would have certain requirements, but you don't have to go with a company.
Certainly. yeah.
Right, so, anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
look at
so
both
it's
cases.
just some adequately identifying information on who was occupying the premises. I mean, that would be, but some of that is going to be part of the review in the SD. You know, that review process is going to be robust on all those kind of safety requirements. And a basic safety requirement would be to know who's on the premises, how many people are in a premises in case of a fire, example, how many people do you think are in there, those kind of information. I was anticipating would be, you know, reviewed administratively through the SD process. But we don't have any motels or do we have anything in town right now that meets?
Hotel?
Yeah, we don't have a hotel, and we don't have a boarding house.
Boarding house is kind of an anachronistic.
Yeah, and we don't have.
It was around in the 60s, but not.
We don't have a
anymore.
bed and breakfast. Right. So we've got no practical recent experience with that registration process. But I'm in favor of there being a, you know, requirement of records of who's there.
I think that's all that section is.
Yeah.
That section is pretty much what all it's
Yeah.
requiring.
Yeah.
You know, to have
So-
name,
so you're-
address.
I haven't
phone
read
number,
it, so I don't
whatever.
know.
Right,
So
okay.
you're not
Pretty
saying,
much.
Steve, that you need to show somebody your ID to get the key? That's not what you're saying.
No, I'm just, we have that on the books.
Right.
And I think it may be that you did have to show an ID. I'm not sure, I can't remember, I read it this morning, glanced over it, said, oh, here's all these requirements, should they apply to
I
an
know that the
Airbnb,
way
you know, an STR? So we
Again,
gotta look at it.
From my experience, whenever we've done Airbnbs, you do all this online, and then they give you a combination. And that combination
Right.
gets you into the unit.
Get you in.
And there's sometimes we never saw the principal owner.
Right.
In fact, I
Right.
think they actually prefer that we don't,
Mhm.
you know.
That's right.
So, a lot of it is based upon the
And that's very different from the
User.
old school, you know, what was short-term rentals before short-term rentals, when you had these commercial real estate companies, like, you know, Long Real Estate, you drive up to the Jersey Shore, you're renting a house for a week, you've got to go to the office to pick up the key, you've got to check in. That sort of isn't necessarily falling out of favor because they've still got a lot of property that they manage, but this is a big competitor, so it's
Right.
it's a different model.
Okay, I'm just saying we probably need to look at it and see if it's applicable. You know? Okay, or what needs to be done. Because like you said, I think you should know how many people, somehow should know how many residents are there, but, you know, that kind of stuff, at least for safety reasons. For
Yeah,
fire, and you know.
I mean, you know, generally speaking, you know, I can check into any hotel anywhere. I don't have to tell them who's coming with me.
True.
They don't have any idea. They don't ask for IDs for every occupant of the room. They just say, how many keys would you like, Mr. Rutledge?
Well, they usually ask you how many people are staying there and how many, but they don't ask for names for all the, some do, some don't. I've been to
Yeah,
some
you know, they're generally
They're
just
not
concerned if you're
consistent.
exceeding the maximum.
Right.
Mm.
So,
All right, anything further on the short-term rentals for this evening?
No, I mean, I'm just, you know, on the agenda to talk with the planning commission and talk with, ECDC, you know, about it and get their input. I know at ECDC that, Commissioner Taylor's already, you know, had some conversations, and so they're aware that, you know, the topic is, you know, afoot here, you know.
All right, well, I look forward to hearing what ECDC and the Planning Commission have to say about that. And we are now going to discuss ordinance 841-25, indoor shooting range revisions. Commissioner Taylor.
Yes, absolutely. So we have the revised version of the ordinance, not yet amended formally, but revised. Both the Rutledge and Edding amendments have been incorporated, striking subsections D1B and 2A2. I view both of these measures as friendly amendments. I think they make the legislation better. I also wanted to bring to the board's attention a good catch from Chief Moore. In the third whereas clause, the use of the word gun should be firearm, or rather firearms plural. So I'm going to include that in the final amendments that we offer, just to make sure that there is definitional and terminological conformity throughout the legislation. Other than that, I really don't have much to add. I see here that we're anticipating a public hearing on June 2nd. I imagine that's because May 19th is a rather long meeting. Am I correct in that, staff, or is there another
I
statutory
think it's
reason
also
for that?
advertising too.
What's that? The
When you
advertisement?
amend the development regs, you have to have 2 weeks
Right.
from the.
Yes. Even though this doesn't
Yeah.
strike as a development reg, it is one. So that's a good reminder. Okay, June 2nd it is. So with that aesthetic change in the third whereas clause, and with both of those sections deleted, I'm very happy with this product. And if anyone has anything else they'd like to add, I'd be happy to talk about that.
I think it was a very
No, I'm good.
productive meeting that we had, and looks like we're pretty good to go. And thank you to the chief for reading the whereases and catching that. And Chief, you're good with this? No concerns from the police perspective?
No, ma'am, I'm perfectly fine with it. I think it's great legislation.
Okay. I had no idea we didn't have any category
No,
for
me
shooting
neither.
ranges indoors in the town, so we'll be correcting that. Anything more on ordinance 841-25?
No, I like the, I like the
Couple of
amendments,
changes.
yeah.
Me
That's
too.
great.
Mhm.
And they were friendly amendments.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to receive them as such.
All right, in that case, if there's nothing further on the indoor shooting range revisions, we will move on to staff comments. All right, Chief Moore, any staff comments?
Just been a busy week, ma'am. That's about it.
I
won't
cannot
say any
imagine
more
how
than that.
busy your week has been. And thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, ma'am. We
I
got
saw
through
the
it.
letter from the Board of Education,
Yes.
thanking you for
Mhm.
all your hard work, as well as the other associated agencies that had to respond to this week's troubles in the schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Klein, any staff comment?
No, ma'am.
All right. Ms. Robertson? All right. None from Lisa, none from Kevin. All right, there we go. Commissioners' comments.
It was a real privilege to represent the town alongside Chief Moore yesterday morning for the wreath laying in front of the Harford County Administrative Office building on Main Street in commemoration of Police Week. Allied agencies were represented, the county executive, our friends from other municipalities, and it was an important reminder of those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And the county executive, I thought, rather poignantly reminded us those who will pay the ultimate sacrifice, because we know that police work will never be a casualty-free line of work, and that every single man and woman who goes into that line of work, that calling, really, it's more than a profession, that calling, takes on that heavy that heavy burden on their shoulders, that they know that they could one day, we pray never, be called upon to give that highest sacrifice. And so it was an important morning marking those who have and those who unfortunately will. And we pray that everything that we can do as municipal leaders and government leaders to minimize that number, hopefully to zero for the long future, giving our men and women in law enforcement everything that they need to stay safe, to protect our community effectively, and to come home to their families. Because just as they keep our families safe, we want to keep them safe for their families. So thank you, Chief Moore, for joining me. It was a tremendous morning, and I do have to give a shout out to Bel Air High School for proffering the bugler who performed a wonderful rendition of Taps.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor, for attending with me. It was a nice event.
Anyone else? No? All right. In that case, we are moving on to the real meat of the meeting, which is the 2026 budget discussion. And I don't see that we have anyone here yet for their presentations.
Not till 5:30.
Okie dokie. Yeah, I thought we were running pretty fast there, so.
We undershot the meeting a lot tonight, yeah.
It's hard to tell. It's really hard to gauge.
Very hard to tell.
All right, well, we keep an eye out for them, yes. And now we'll start with, Lisa, if you want to do, I guess, the enterprise funds are first. And give us a page number.
Absolutely. Let's see, so we're gonna start with, sewer fund, excuse me, which is page 202. As we've done in the past, I'll review the revenues and then several of the expense accounts, and then turn it over to Steve Klein, who will also review some expense accounts with you all. We kind of share these two enterprise funds, so. All right. I'm actually going to be on page 204. And as I mentioned, we're going to review the revenues first. So the very first account there are the sewer service charges at a little over $3 million. The base charge, which again is based on the meter size as well as the sewer rate, the increase here is based on the Consumer Price Index as of December 2024, which was 2.9%. Therefore, the sewer rate increase is 21 cents from $7.29 to $7.50 per 1,000 gallons. This would be effective July 1, 2025. And based on the estimate here, as I mentioned, we're estimating revenues to be $3,048,000. That is the largest source of revenue for the enterprise fund. So are there any questions on that one?
Yes, Director Moody, I was just wondering if you could just slow us down just on the increase based on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Is that's kind of like a built-in thing?
Sure. So town code, there's a provision in the town code that allows for an automatic CPI provision in the code. And this is what predominantly we've done in years past. There's probably only been a very, very few times, probably less than half a dozen, that we've had to increase the sewer rates a second time during the fiscal year for something other than the CPI. We've used historically the December 2024 Consumer Price Index. So that's what we're consistently doing again with fiscal year 26. So this is all already allowed per code. The rate change will not come back before you as a change, as an ordinance change, because it's already written into town code. You're welcome.
And for the processing of our sewage, we pay Harford County, is that correct?
For the, yep, for the
And this-
treatment.
Right, the
Correct.
treatment. So this increase is in line with what the county is projecting for their increases that they're going to send to us?
The
Or-
county doesn't give us any type of projection. So, like we've talked before, it's very hard to predict. You know, it's based on the flows, it's based on their audited financials. Historically, their rates continue to increase. I did a little bit of calculations to try to prepare for tonight. Again, we normally get the rate from them November, December-ish. If we receive another large rate increase, large is relative. I can't
Right.
tell you how to define that right now. But we are gonna have to seriously take a look at it, sooner rather than later, as soon as we get that rate increase in. So for every additional 10 cents that we would increase our rate, that would mean an increase in revenue of about $40,000, give or take, really rough numbers. Their rate increases have been consistently a lot more than, 10 cents. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. I don't wanna change, I don't wanna recommend to you all that we change a rate on the possibility that their rate increases, because I don't think that's fair to our taxpayers. I would rather have supporting documentation to be able to come back to you all so that you all also have it to talk to your constituents about it as to why we have to do this. And we'll look historically too, and I'll be able to tell you exactly when the last time we raised the rate that wasn't a normal CPI index.
Right.
So just keep all of this in the back of your minds, and as soon as we get that rate increase, we'll have another discussion about it.
But we're planning on a 21% rate increase. Is that what you're saying?
21 cents.
Cent, yeah, 21 cent. What did I say?
Yes,
What did I say, dollar?
You said percent.
Percent, okay.
cents.
Percents, right, that's what I meant. 21 cent increase is what we're
Correct.
planning on.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Which
That-
is a 2.9%
Percent.
increase.
Correct. Yes.
And Lisa, as I recall, the problem with the system doesn't work well for us because we are now deciding our budget now in May, and we have to, by code, do it now in May. You won't get the new price the actual rate, because you get new projections until November or December from the county. And when does that kick in?
It's effective July 1. It's
Okay.
retroactive.
Right, it's retroactive.
That's what the kicker is.
So it is really problematic to budget for this because we have no guess.
Correct.
No real number, and then it's retro to July 1st, but we don't get it until 5-6 months after we've
At least
started
6
the
months in the
budget
fiscal
year.
year. Yep.
Someone
So-
should call their representative about that.
Somebody should, all of us should.
I've had conversations with the sewer department about it. Could you at least get me projections? Can you just tell me where things stand from a numbers perspective? I'm not gonna hold you to it. It just would help in our budgeting, and I
So
didn't
what-
get anywhere.
What numbers the county use?
The county doesn't use anything until their audit is finished, so they won't know. Like,
I mean, in their budget. In their budget now, they're putting their budget together now. What are they using? Like,
I
mean,
I
we should
don't
be,
know
I
that.
was just curious.
sorry, yeah, that's not something that
Because they're in the same boat as we are. If their audit comes up and they gotta raise more than they figured they were gonna do, then they're gonna have to raise the rate to all their customers, right?
Well, they have numbers in-house to be able to help them with that. I just think it's a matter of they're not willing to
They're
share
not
that.
share it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So more to come on that one. A couple of other revenue accounts. The other revenue is budgeted at $31,400. This houses a lot of different types of revenues. It is our advertising revenue for delinquent sewer and user benefit accounts during the tax sale process. It is our plan review fees, interest on delinquent user benefit accounts. We also, when we have to submit the bay restoration fee to the state of Maryland on a quarterly basis, they allow us to keep a 5% administrative costs. So that's housed in this account as well. This account is pretty stable. There's not a lot of fluctuation here. The utility locator fee, we've had this for several years now. It's budgeted at $18,200. It's basically a charge for a missed utility markout in the amount of $35 and then $15 for any remarks. And then the last two, connection fees and the user benefit fees, these are strictly pass-throughs to Harford County. So again, it's tough to predict with that connection fee revenue is going to be an expense for that matter. But we've consistently just budgeted at 50,000. I don't want to say it's a meaningless number, but whatever comes in goes right back out. So it's a wash. It doesn't matter whether we budget 50,000 and it comes in at 500,000. It has no impact on anything. The user benefit fees, again, this is a wash. We bill all of the residents for new connections into the sewer system for Harford County. It's a $35 per connection charge. It's based on fixture counts, I should say. So again, we have the cost of the mailing and the postage and the collection. So we have some administrative costs that we don't get reimbursed for, we never have. This goes back to before my time, when there was probably a verbal agreement that we would do this and we wouldn't ask them for any kind of administrative cost reimbursement. So again, it's an in and out, whatever we collect, we submit to the county. Any questions on any of those? Okay, we're gonna move on then to expenses. Let's see. So page 211, I'm gonna skip over those because we've talked about all the benefits. We do have 2 full-time employees where their salaries are charged directly to the sewer fund, which is a little different than the parking fund. So then on page 212, at the bottom, you'll see, again, the connection payments that I mentioned on the revenue side, and you'll see that the budget is exactly the same at 50,000. We've talked about the Harford County charges. We're just gonna wait and see, you know, how that works out, and then we'll have a further conversation about that. On page 213, user benefit fee payments, again, that's the other side of what I just spoke about on the revenue side. At the very bottom, account processing fees on 213, similar to the real estate tax, mailing and billing and processing. This is the account that houses the costs for that same service, but for the utility bills. So that's roughly $30,000. On page 214, miscellaneous in the middle of the page, account 0700. Again, similar to the general fund, this account has about $2,000 in unexpected expenses, but it also includes the cost of living as well as the changes to the civilian pay plan. At the bottom of page 214, the debt service for the inflow and infiltration, that is the last debt service payment, or last debt service that we have in the sewer fund. It will mature June 5th of 2027, so just one more fiscal year to go after 26. And then we'll be really debt-free within the sewer fund. On page 215, transfer to general fund, that's account that ends in 1003. So the parking and the sewer fund are enterprise funds. With governmental accounting, enterprise funds are supposed to be self-sustaining. Their accounting is treated like a business. So the majority of the salaries and overhead, as well as benefits, are all really in the general fund, other than the 2 full-time sewer employees. So everyone on my staff has something to do with the sewer fund. Steve's staff. So again, Michael in HR, Josh with IT. So there is a proration there that we look at every year before the budget is put together. do the department heads feel that these percentages of your staff's time still seem reasonable with regard to the sewer fund? So those costs for those salaries are then apportioned back to the sewer fund along with the allocation for the benefits as well as the overhead. So if the sewer fund was a standalone business, it would have to pay for utilities. It would have to pay for maintenance on the building. So those are also a proration back to the sewer fund. And you can see that on the last 2 pages, so 17, actually 3, 17, 18, and 19. You can see the, on 219, you can see the details of the overhead that is prorated back to the general fund, as well as the different allocated salaries on page 218, and then the benefits as well as the transfer calculation on 217. So in essence, the sewer fund owes back the general fund about $434,000 for all of these types of costs. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. And then lastly, on page 215, account 1050 is depreciation. So again, we're thinking about this as a business. And with businesses, when you buy capital assets or have any type of capital projects that's considered an asset of the business, it is added onto your books as an asset on your balance sheet, not an expense on your income statement. So you have useful lives for those assets, and then you depreciate that asset over time. And so that's what this represents. So $75,000 is the depreciation on those assets in the sewer fund. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Steve. We'll finish out the sewer fund, and then we'll move on to our committees, if that's okay. All righty. Steve, your show.
Yes, because of the time sensitivity of tonight's meeting, I've tried to not go too in detail. I'll say please ask any questions if I haven't addressed what you were looking at. The town sanitary sewer system is made up, and I'm looking at page 213 and 214 primarily as my line items. The town sanitary sewer system is made up of approximately 40 miles of sewer mains, 1,041 manholes in the streets, 13 pump station, and we collect about 1 million gallons of sewage each day. The system is primarily operated by Wayne Smith and Steve Green, as Lisa indicated earlier, and we operate this system 365 days a year. The regular costs to operate the system include Wayne and Steve's salaries, the utilities to run the pump stations, electric and telephone and water, and the equipment, maintenance, and supplies, 24/5. Root control, $45,000. We do this on a triannual basis to those areas that have more roots in the sewer mains than the other areas. And each year we have main and lateral repairs where we have a broken pipe or something like that where we need to actually go in with big equipment and have repairs made to the system. And finally, Miss Utility is $3,050 to mark our sewer lines. When anyone digs in town, they call Miss Utility, and we're asked to go out and mark our sewer system so someone doesn't dig and break into our sewer lines. On page 213 of the proposed budget, it includes line item 8400-0303, which is pump station engineering. $160,000 has been earmarked to fund the cost of design upgrades for the Kelly Avenue pump station for future. We're currently still working on the FY25 process where we're working on Shamrock Pump Station and Gateway Drive Pump Station, and that's in the current year that you approved last year. Finally, there are no new funding requests being requested this year for new vehicles or new capital. And other than that, that's basically what we do for the sewer system on a daily basis and what we've requested budgeting for. Is there any questions for the sewer?
Steve, I just had one. On the Kelly Station,
Yes, sir.
the Kelly Station pump engineering, we talked about at some point connecting the the trail?
Yes, sir.
I mean, would that, is
It-
the,
it-
where-
it- it-
is
The
that
trail
being
would go
cons-
to the right of the existing sewer
I was
pump
gonna say,
station.
were you considering that in the redesign so that you
Absolutely.
can accommodate both?
Yeah,
Okay,
it
great.
fits in nice to the left there on that lot, and we'd be able to sneak a nice pathway right to the right of it
Okay.
if you're coming down Thomas Street.
Right.
Yep.
That's it, thanks.
Perfect.
Lisa, I know that the balance in the fund excuse me, I know that the budget in the fund is of course balanced, but are we operating under the assumption that we'll be taking a net loss or net gain?
We have, in years past, because of the unknown with the county's rate, we have said we're gonna break even.
Okay.
That's not true. I mean,
Right.
we know that, but it's such a crapshoot.
Right.
It's not like normally, it is,
Come on.
it's a crapshoot. I'm being totally honest. I've done this for a long time. Oh, my gosh. It is. I'm so sorry. Well,
Come on.
thanks, Angela.
I'm shocked no one has ever made that joke before. I mean, that was some inspired. That was inspired.
And I was just rolling with it, and Angela
Yeah.
picked up on it, so, we have tried several different ways to budget in this fund. We've said, okay, well, historically, it's been this, so we've tried budgeting that way. We've been so far off.
Right.
So it's so difficult, so we just say, okay, we're gonna break even. What I wanted to mention, and this kind of goes along with your question, Jake, is Steve mentioned account 0303, the pump station engineering for Kelly Avenue. So I'm still on page 213.
I did notice that.
I have in the justification that this project is on hold until we receive the Harford County rate.
So if we fall well short and it looks like we're going to take a bad loss or just a loss in general, this is something that can easily be plucked out
Yep.
to make our problems a little bit easier.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, hate doing that. That's, not what we want to do. But it's something that, at least for now, we're putting it on hold to at least have the discussions with you all at a later date. It just makes sense, because that's one thing that, with all of these other accounts, you can't put them on hold. There's no other account you can put on hold. So that's what we're doing with this one.
So how urgent is it that we redo the Kelly Avenue pump station?
It's getting to that time. It's still operating well, but it's that time.
2 years, 5 years? I mean,
It's hard to say, Steve, when something could
Well, I mean,
actually
when
go
would you-
bad, but we
when
would
would you
like to
like to do
start
it?
getting it done in the next several years,
In the next
after
couple
we
years.
get it engineered and so forth.
and that'll be at about another $1 million.
I don't think so. It doesn't
Not as
handle,
much?
it doesn't handle quite as much sewage as the other ones. It's a
As the
much
other
smaller
ones.
station. It's a different type of station. It's
Okay.
rather than a wet well, it's a dry well. So it works a little easier.
Okay.
And
Yep.
if you're able to refresh my memory, can you remind me how the $160,000 figure for the engineering and design compares to the design cost for those much larger pumps?
You know what? I cannot.
Okay.
I can't remember what the heck they were.
That's okay, neither can I,
Yeah,
so-
I'm sorry about that.
No, it makes two of us. I was
Yeah.
just curious if because we're merely talking about design, if the design is going to hover around the same number, or if for a
Yeah.
smaller pump,
I-
design costs less.
Just off the top of my head, I believe they were closer to the 200,000 mark.
Okay.
I don't know that for sure, but I know the other ones had to go a lot further with the force main, where this one doesn't have to go, and it doesn't have as much head, which means the elevation in which it has to pump the sewage uphill to get to a point where then it goes gravity fed. So because Howard Park and Kelly Station are very flat, it doesn't have to go up too high, so it should be cheaper.
Well, I will say what I've learned over the past couple months, something new that I didn't know before, is that it is expensive to design a system that distributes water. We have run into that several times, and I continue to be shocked by just how expensive these design costs are.
I always think it's the cost of the project, and
Right.
upon closer reading, it is not. It is the cost of the design. It's very expensive.
Anything else on sewer fund?
No.
Okay,
And the sewer fund is certainly like really important to us as a town.
Absolutely.
yep, it sure is, yeah. Alrighty, we are gonna go, back up to presentations. Katie is here from the Harford County Education Foundation. The letter is on page 116, so she's gonna come up and, have her budget presentation.
All right, the
Floor is
podium is
yours.
all yours. And if you could just state your first and last name for
Sure,
our.
hi, I'm Katie Jacob.
There you go.
I'm here representing the Harford County Education Foundation. As we all know and are aware that we have a community full of wonderful schools, teachers, and students. Unfortunately, though, many families in the area struggle to afford basic educational supplies, and the teachers often end up using their own money to fill the gap. So our Tools for Schools Resource Center, which is located in the town of Bel Air, is an integral part of the community, providing essential learning materials, classroom resources, and support for students and educators in Bel Air and throughout Harford County. We are asking, with your investment, that we can continue delivering vital programs and enhance educational success. We have Tools for Success, which is supplying students, teachers, classrooms with essential school supplies and learning materials to support academic achievement. Our classroom enrichment programs, which provide teachers with innovative resources that enhance student engagement and learning. And our early childhood literacy, which ensures youth learners birth through age 5 to have access to high-quality books and instructional resources to strengthen family bonds and build strong reading skills before even entering schools. When students have the access to these tools and resources that they need, they're more likely to succeed academically, develop confidence, and contribute positively to the community. So we are just, again, asking for your support and thanking you for your past support, that we can continue to provide these services to the area. Thank you.
Any questions for our guest?
No, Katie, I think what you guys do is a great thing. I mean, the future of our communities with the kids, and I fully support your efforts and what we can do to contribute to that. So, I mean, you have my vote for
Thank you.
looking at that, okay?
I'm new to the organization, but as I have a child in the school system, so it feels really good to be able to help with the program and see it directly impact even my own
Right.
child in school.
Yeah, and I had 3 kids that went through school in Bel Air, and, you know, it took a lot of extra activities from the parents and all, through the PTAs and other activities, to give them the education that they deserve, so, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I fully support your efforts.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna continue and go to, Lassos with Melinda. Perfect timing.
And the
Page 117
podium
is
is
the
all
letter.
yours. If you would just state your first and last name for our minutes.
Sure. So my name is Melinda Velez, and I'm the Executive Director of Lassos, linking all so others succeed. Lassos is located here in the town of Bel Air. We've been here for the last 15 years. Lassos has a constituency of over 21,000 people that we work with in Harford County. Here in the town of Bel Air, we have over 4,000 residents that we work with. Lassos is a literacy center in the concept of anything that you need in order to help you become literate in our society. So we help them with financial literacy, employment, housing, education, technology, healthcare, whatever you might need. We kind of help them through that process with the goal of integration into American society. We're very fortunate to be here in the town of Bel Air and to be welcomed the way that we are. Really, truly, all of our work that we do, we bring it back into the town. Whether it's a fundraising activity, we just celebrated Tea Time Around the World at the Bel Air Armory, which was so much fun. We had over 250 people that came in. So it was an opportunity for people to come into the town, but then also the relationships that we made with other businesses here in the town that kind of support our work as well. So, you know, Tea Time allowed for Tea by Two to come. We allowed You Make Sense to come. We had, you know, whoever it is that's in the town that actually could benefit as well from being seen in such a great event was just really cool. Anyway, so we also do the Haunted History Tours, where we talk about the history and the greatness that is the town of Bel Air. That brings over 750 people into our community. Again, we work with partnerships. The police chief is always fantastic and makes sure that we're always safe. And then he also helps on the tour, which is always nice. His history is great. We should actually record him. Just have one of those little robots, you know. Have you guys seen that robot at ShopRite? That thing scared me. Have you seen it? They have a robot now that goes down the aisles at ShopRite. So anyways, it was scary. I'm sorry. I didn't expect it. But yeah, we could now record you, Chief. Anyways, we continue to grow. We continue to do work. We work alongside the chief whenever there's kind of an issue. I'm very proud of our relationship that we have with the town with regards to whether it's economic development, opportunities for our members, as well as trying to keep our streets safe. It really, truly is just a conversation. I'm able to call and say, hey, chief, this seems to be a concern, and the town just kind of takes care of it, which is fantastic. So anyway, I mean, I can talk for a long time, so you kind of have to tell me how I can help you.
All right, any questions for Melinda? I know you also do summer camps during the
Yes, ma'am,
summer
we
for the
do.
kids. I remember that was a big deal.
Yeah, so last year we had over 254 students that were a part of summer camp. We are housed at the Bel Air High School. We work in collaboration with Harford County Public Schools. And on Fridays, we are literally on the streets. So because the school system closes on Thursday, they only go Monday to Thursday. So Friday, we need a place. So the Bel Air Armory works with us and allows us to have that as a safe place in case the weather isn't nice. You know, like when we had that 2 years ago, we had that weird smoke, remember? And we were like, what is this? I couldn't have the kids on the street, so they let us work out of the Armory. But normally we're in Shamrock Park. So if you're ever looking for like a great kind of something to do on a Friday, or just be like, oh, I could use a pick-me-up, that's where you can always find us. Or we're walking the streets doing tours and showing people all the great things that we have. I think the thing that's been really nice about it is that the kids feel incredibly welcome in the community, and they really truly see themselves as a part of a community, which is really important when you're trying to acclimate. Thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Heading.
Melinda, real quick, I did notice, I mean, we look at the crime stats constantly, and I did notice that the census, there is an increase in the population, seems to be an increase in the population that you serve between the last census and this census, just
There was
as for
even.
awareness for the commissioners, I think it's up to like 12%, something like that.
Yeah, that was up to 2020, and then our new results that just came out in January has us even higher. And so we work really hard to kind of make sure the acclimation happens as fast as possible so that we're not feeling that need. We're also really lucky that the community calls on us when they see, you know, somebody that might be out of a grocery store, and we're like, well, they're not one of us, so let's see how we can help them get what they need and get to where they're supposed to be. So we're kind of nice that we've kind of created that kind of credibility that we can work with people to kind of help them acclimate as soon as possible, or get to where they need to be as safely as possible.
We're now distracted looking at the materials that
I'm
you
so
circulated.
sorry. I was like, it'd
I
be
didn't
nice
want you to
show
mistake it for lack of interest,
No,
since
no,
everybody's
no.
looking at the pictures and the materials.
Well, remember, we had it in the Armory, and we were able to sit at that big table, and so we could talk, and so now that we're here, you're farther from me, so sorry.
Anyone have any questions for Melinda? Thank you so much for
Awesome.
coming
Thank you.
and for all the work that
Thanks,
you
Mike.
do.
Thank you for your support. Thanks, Mike. I think you'll get another one, just save it for me.
All right, continuing on with our last presentation, Dawn Stewart is here. Page 192 is the letter from the Bel Air Independence Day Committee.
go. The podium is all yours, sir. If you could just state your first and last name for the people watching at home.
There's people watching me at home?
There could be, yes. We are live streaming our
No
meeting.
kidding.
Absolutely. We live
21st
stream it,
century, holy smokes.
and you can actually watch it later on YouTube since you're clearly not at home to watch it.
I'm, I'm Donald Stewart. I'm with the Bel Air 4th of July Committee, among other things, but that's what I'm here for today. So, any questions?
Can we have more fireworks?
Can you have more?
That's my favorite part of the parade personally, is I do enjoy the fireworks.
Well,
I mean, the
keep on-
parade is great, but that ending is wonderful. They do a really great job with fireworks. The town.
Listen, the 4th of July parade, that's principally Michael Blum, who organizes and pulls together that. The fireworks is all mine. Between the two of us, we do not, and then, of course, there's the Uncle Sam Says that Michael also does, so he kind of double duties for the day, and all I do is oversee everything, so make sure everything's still happening. I mean, I help with the parade and help with other events and so forth, but I don't do anything with horseshoes. Only thing, I can't be two places at once, so I have to pick where am I going to go, and I think horseshoes, they can take care of themselves. And the rest of it, I just go around and make sure it happens. I thank God for DPW, who are out there, and when we really have good staff there working with us, oh my gosh, do they make a difference. And I hope Freddie's going to be there this year. I don't know if he will or not, but one thing I would just want to talk to him about how I want to have one area fenced off a little differently than we've done in the past, but otherwise, everything's perfect. And it really runs well because of them. If it wasn't for DPW, we wouldn't have an event.
They are one of our most favored departments from the public.
Well, mine too. I've known a lot of the people that work there for decades, and whenever people change over, and when Freddie moved in to kind of work on taking point on things, I said, well, a perfectly familiar face with me. I know him, and I've chatted with him for years. One of the advantages of being in the 4th of July Committee and being boots on the ground, you can't help, to get to know the people, that have their boots on the ground with you side by side. And get to know them as people, not just guys doing stuff. So I've always enjoyed that part of my job too, getting to know them and working with them.
Well, it's
So
certainly a
we're-
very
we're,
popular
uh,
event.
We're working on doing the fundraising side of things. We've got outreaches to a lot of businesses that have helped us in the past. We do major sponsorships. Our biggest one's going to be Jones Junction again. They're our primary sponsor. I got Drescher Foundation coming in with another sizable donation as well. Between those three and you, and then a slightly broader breadth on people just doing band sponsorships and so forth. We should be fine with being able to afford the event. Trying to think if there's anything else I really need to say. So, we'll just hope for good weather. Don't want, we've been fortunate, knock on wood, over the years. We've, and I agree with the fireworks. I agree. I found this company that we were working with for some years. The guy that wrote the book, and I'm literally the book that's on fireworks safety. He wrote it, and it's used around the world. And so he's considered to be the best and most famous shooter in the entire world. He happened to discover Bel Air as one of the sites that are available to shoot at. He visited this location, came one year, and never wanted to leave. He said, A, the people here are so friendly. B, it's not the best fireworks shot area. It's kind of tight and so forth, and he doesn't have the opportunity to put up 8-inch shells or anything really great like that. To supplement that, he makes sure super high quality shells are brought, and he shoots the best show he possibly can with what he has, with the ability to do it. And he brings a large team of people there. It isn't just 2 people shooting. He has like 5 or 6 people, and they're all around. They're all dropping flares and all the time. And their team, they know just how to shoot them up at just the right times. So they have a series of mini finales during the entire thing. They have the initial Principia, that's just designed to get your attention. And then and the way the whole show is displayed during the entire 20 minutes. And they asked me, how long do I want the show to be? And one year I made the mistake of saying, well, because I know the technical answers, it's 20 minutes. You know, that's the length of time of a fireworks show. The reason is that after on the 21st minute, you're getting bored. And you are. It doesn't matter if it's fireworks, you're getting bored. And that's the book. And he wrote the book. He knows what the rules are. You stop at 20 minutes. And no matter how expensive your show is, you spend $3,000 on a fireworks show, you spend $50,000 on a fireworks show, it's 20 minutes. So I gave him the technical answer. And the next year, I looked at him when he asked me the same exact question. I went, okay, this is a trick question. I could see it coming. So I'm going to give him a different answer. I said, how long do you want it to be, given what kind of shells you got? You decide. You tell me. And he looked at me and went, no one's ever responded that way before. I said, well, I think I'm talking to the right person to give you the answer. So he kind of said, we might make it 15 minutes. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a lot of super quick shells going off. And so it'll be a little shorter, but it's in my opinion, given what we have, it'll be a better show. I said, then that's what we're going to do. And that was last year. I thought last year was just spectacular. And he put his heart and soul into it. He just loved every second of it. And then he was, quite frankly, I even overheard him bragging about the people that run the show are giving us the ability to do whatever we please. Don't you just love this place? I really don't want this guy to leave. I mean, he's spectacular. And if we lose him and we wind up getting some other yokels, it'll be enormously disappointing.
Well, then I suggest you keep that guy, and keep him happy. You know, we can get him some cookies from Cookie and a sandwich from
The number
Vagabond.
the one thing I do for him, and the one thing they always brought him back, I hate to say this, we're the only people in the entire place, the entire world that he shoots, where they actually place a porta pot right there in the firing zone. Nobody does that. Do you believe it? These guys spend hours and hours and hours there, and they have to go find a tree somewhere, for God's sake. So at least we place a porta pot right on site, right in a nice, convenient location for them, and they brag about that little thing.
It's the details. It's the little things.
You know, you got to be, as a community, you have to be considerate and consider who they are, what might their needs be. First year they came here too, they brought everyone under the sun with their family. And they had, children and so on and so forth, and they all had their own little private viewing area and so forth. And that was the only year that, we had that turnout, where they all said, you got to come here and see this place. So they all came, and now it's a much smaller group. The only thing that surprises me now that there's police that are there at the check-in point. By the way, they know me when I pull up. I pull up and they go, they're all angry. And they go, oh, that's Don. And then they open the gate and let me in. And but after I'm there and I get settled and I'm talking to the guys and so forth, and the parade is winding up, all of a sudden there's people streaming in. And to the point that every single parking spot is taken. I'm going, who are all these people? And the police are letting them in. So apparently there's some sort of pass thing going on. So if you got some sort of privy where you know people, you can get right on that sparking spot and get a great viewing area of fireworks. So you should, if you don't know that, you got to play that card.
I might know about that. But I remember, there is standing room only up and down Churchville Road on the median strip. I mean, you were just jammed in there like sardines, because a lot of people that live close by, like me, can just walk up the street and be at Churchville Road, and it's for such a small town, we have a really terrific fireworks display on the 4th of July, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I'm proud of it. I mean, it's a thing that brings me back every year. The parade is a physical load of work, and the long day, just getting to the point where we have fireworks. And fireworks is just a great place for me to just go and say, all right. Right. I got all that behind me. I can sit down and just let these
There you
guys
go.
do
You
their
can
thing.
just relax and watch the fireworks and start planning next year.
Yeah, what I do there too is I go out there. I don't view the fireworks where you guys do. I go out there with the shooters. I'm standing there with them. I got gear on to protect my face, and I got stuff to protect my body. I do have hot debris fall on me. The point of my being there is that I tell them, if something happens, if there's an injury, someone puts a torch down, that thing blows right at their feet, which happens. One time, I'll tell you this, one time the lady turned her back to me, facing toward where the shells were, and the thing blew, I mean, I was about 20 feet away, and it blew right toward me, but she was right in between me and the blast, and there was a shadow of a person going like this. A shadow was coming right toward me with fireworks going all around.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, I could not have been, I could not have been any luckier. I mean, I was inches from just getting scorched, because I didn't have, any gear on to protect me outside of the full clothing and so forth, just in case, but nothing for like that. But that shadow coming toward me, I'll never forget that for all my life.
And that's why I leave those fireworks to the professionals.
Yeah, and she wears, the gear from head to toe. She was completely unscathed, but they stopped the show for about 30 seconds. All the guys ran over to her and checked her out, made sure she was okay, and she kept insisting she was fine. And then they went about her business. So if there's ever a long pause, you see, that's what happened.
That's what happens. All right. Any further questions? No. Well, thank you very much for coming. We're looking forward to the 4th of July. It's coming up pretty fast.
Tell me
year.
about that, I know. Whew. All right, well, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
appreciate all your support. I mean, I don't know how many years I've been doing this, but it's been a long time. And Lisa might know, but more than 30 years. But the people that work with me, I've recruited Michael Blum when I was about 3 or 4 years into it, so he's been in it almost as long as me. And the several others have joined us, and they just stay with us. So we must be doing something right. We get people to get out there and work their butts off, and they just keep coming back every year.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're looking forward to it this year again.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it so much. See you later.
All right. And now back to the budget issues, special revenue funds.
We're gonna move to parking. That's our second enterprise fund. Let's see, page 222. Steve and I will do the same thing here, where I'll review the revenues, some of the expenses, and then he'll cover a few of the expenses as well. So we have really three sources of revenue within the parking fund. The first one is meter collections. This is, again, collections from all the town's meters. It's our parking garage vouchers, as well as the Park Mobile. It's based on FY '25, and we're projecting revenue to be $125,000. Parking fines is based on 2 full-time parking enforcement personnel, and again, is based on fiscal year '25 with a projection of almost $105,000. And then our leased fees are based on actual lease agreements at the time that the budget was prepared at the various locations, so Bon Thomas, Hickory, Lee Street, the parking garage. We have an agreement with Vagabond, as well as an agreement with the tower. The total amount of projected revenue here is $69,000. The next 2 accounts there, you'll see it's county share operations as well as county share capital. So county share operations, the county owns 67.2% of the garage, and we own the rest. So we manage it, we operate it, everything flows through our books. We are audited by the county. Once our audit is complete, they will review the expenses as it relates to the parking garage, which is why you'll see when we get to the expense side, we separate out the parking garage from the lots, and then from another division, if you will, called other, because they're only interested in the parking garage costs, so it wouldn't make sense to commingle everything. Once the audit is complete and approved by their management, then they essentially cut us a check for their portion of operations and capital. The capital piece of it is the same. We've agreed to put $15,000, set it aside into a capital repairs account. So they're 2/3 and our 1/3 split. They will reimburse us at the same time they reimburse us for the operations. And then the last account on page 222 is the transfer from retained earnings. So again, this is treated as a business, so it's not fund balance anymore like the general fund or even special revenue fund for that matter, because they're considered governmental type funds. You have retained earnings in business, so that's why you see that terminology within the enterprise funds. We are anticipating, again this year, expenses to exceed revenues by $140,000. We've talked about this, and I know we've got some more to discuss this evening on some items, but revenues are not covering expenses, and they're not anticipated to cover expenses in fiscal year '26 either. All right, moving on to expenses, unless you all have any questions on the revenues.
Lisa, yes, I had a couple.
Yep.
The two parcels of land that the tower leases, what are those two pieces?
Can you speak to this?
Is one of them, they lease part of the parking lot next door to them?
At least the patio.
The patio?
The patio's down.
So it's the patio. And what is the other parcel?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, it's under on page 222, it says the agreement with Main Street Tower to lease two parcels of land expires in February 28, 25.
So it's been expired. So for a couple months.
Well,
It
I
has
was just wondering
expi-
what the two pieces.
We're in the process right now of negotiating that. So yeah, as that might be incorrectly stated in there. I know it's just the
just one.
Yeah,
patio.
I know, I thought,
Yeah.
you think it's just one?
Just one.
Okay.
Anything else on revenues?
And then, well.
Yep, sorry,
Oh,
Steve.
and how much do we have left? You had on our debt on the parking garage, we still have, that's not paid off yet?
The parking garage is paid off.
Is paid off?
It is paid off.
Okay.
That debt that's listed there is for the parking garage sweeper.
Okay,
So
for the
they
sweeper.
reimburse us for
Okay.
those costs for the parking garage sweeper, principal and interest.
Okay, thanks.
So I noticed from FY '23 to FY '24, there was a precipitous decrease, well, we'll say the increase in the loss. We lost more from, in the pages that you sent out,
Yep.
Lisa, we lost significantly more in '24 than we did in '23 by a factor of about 50,000.
Correct.
And we're looking at another 30%, or excuse me, $30,000 movement in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with the precipitous change there? Because I noticed, there's actually a lot of major, up and down here. FY '19 was the only good year, but there's a year when and so was FY '17, but there's a year we lost 130,000. What's going on there?
So if fiscal year 18, there's an asterisk by fiscal year 18.
Mm-hmm.
So we had
I
some
see.
major capital repairs as well as an electrical conduit repaired and some signage expenses. So our capital and major expense work was up in that fiscal year, which resulted in that loss. In fiscal year '24, there's a double asterisk there. Our insurance through Legit was adjusted. Michael had a major project with Legit where they came out, reviewed all of our properties. Some were significantly undervalued from an insurance perspective. The parking garage was one of those. So it was that piece of correcting the replacement values, we had some major capital work and some increased operating expenses in FY '24.
And are those, I know we haven't discussed expenses yet,
That's
but
okay.
are those carrying over into '25, which is why we're not sort of reverting to a mean, we're actually continuing to move in the negative direction?
So, to my knowledge, if I remember right, there isn't any major capital work in FY '26. Insurance, of course, isn't gonna go down,
Right,
right?
right. So once that correction was made, that's built in. Yep,
Yep.
and I get that, but
Yep. Yep.
just, and I'm assuming that insurance correction was most of the jump from 60 to 112?
It was about maybe a third of it,
Oh, only a third?
maybe a third of it. Yep.
So a third of that 60,000, so that'd be about 20,000, so
Yep.
let's call it $80,000
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, you take the insurance adjustment over 23, you're at an $80,000 loss, and then the rest capital.
Capital, yep.
So for this year, for us to
Mhm.
then have an additional $30,000 in Ross, I mean, is that just really the rapid deterioration of money coming in, or is that the rapid explosion of the cost to maintain the parking garage?
I don't believe our expenses increased that significantly. No, let's see. Overall, no, our total expenses from '25 to '26 were pretty stable from a budget standpoint. So it is, the revenue side, and it's, as you can see from the chart, it's all over the board.
Right.
I mean, it's just, it's fluctuating significantly. So I think it's probably more on the revenue side than it is the expenses have increased, because there is really no increase in the operating expenses when it comes to the garage itself. Our lots are pretty standard. We really haven't done any major maintenance work on our lots. We've continued to put off the resurfacing of the Hickory lot year after year after year. Steve asks me every single year, right, Steve?
Not everything, but the last 4.
At least the last 4. There's just not the money to do that on that lot.
So if the issue is on the revenue side, and I buy that, I'm just trying to find it in the numbers. I see that so I'm looking at the revenue fund total numbers, right? On page 221, year over year.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the anticipated numbers, and it looks like our recommended anticipated number is pretty much in line with what was anticipated in 2024, a little higher than what was anticipated in 2023, but the actual number in those accounts is significantly lower.
I'm sorry, Jake, where exactly,
So
what
on
numbers are
page
you referring to?
221 under
Okay.
revenue fund total, and tell me if that's not a good place to look.
Yep, no, you're good.
So I'm looking at, you know, let's just look at 2023, 2024, 2025 anticipated. Our 2026 recommended anticipated is pretty much in line with that, fluctuating in the $500,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that the actual values, and I know 2025 isn't complete yet, but the actual values for 2023 and 2024 are significantly lower
Mm-hmm.
than the anticipated.
Right.
So is that why we're projecting such a big loss? And if that's why is our recommended anticipated number in line with those numbers that we fell short of in the past fiscal years?
So if I can have you turn to page 220.
Please. Yeah.
And I know you were referring to 23 and 24. So if you look at the parking fines line, which is
Mhm.
the second one, and you look at the anticipated versus the actual, in 2023, we anticipated 115, we brought in 56,000. And then in 2024, the budget was 92,000, we brought in 79,000. So, better, with that year. We had some parking, enforcement staffing changes, and we went, I want to say we went almost, Chief's gone, a couple of years without it being fully staffed,
Okay.
which really hurts. I mean, you have one person out there to patrol the entire town, and she's also doing meter collections on every Wednesday, which takes away from that. So when you're not fully staffed, that really hurts that line item. We have been fully staffed. That line item is coming back, which is good to see. So I think that's part of it as well, is that one line item in those 2 years that you mentioned.
So that makes sense, and that is good. I guess my continuing question is, if the reason why we're expecting a $30,000 larger loss for this year than last year, if we're saying that the reason for that is on the revenue side, but the total revenue that we're expected to bring in is only going down, anticipated, 2025 to 2026, by about $1,500.
Okay, so back to page 221. The line item transfer from retained earnings.
Yes.
So I hate using the word plug in accounting. It is just a bad word to use. But to balance this
I see.
budget, that is the line item that balances this budget.
Do we have a figure with that backed out to see what the revenue without the balancing is?
It would be $140,000 less.
Sure.
So we are short $140,000 in the FY26 budget, because I don't have enough current year revenues to support the expenses. So where's the money gonna come from?
Sure.
It's gonna come from
Absolutely.
retained earnings.
So my question is, I completely understand that it's going to be $140,000
Okay.
less. What I'm interested in seeing is, if we're saying that our problem is on the revenue side, what once we back out that transfer from retained earnings, because that number is dictated also by our expenses, because it's got to balance the budget, right?
Correct.
So what I'm interested in finding is what we'll call the true revenue year over year is. Does that make sense? How much money the fund is bringing in on its own year over year? And so it looks like our transfer there, let's see here.
You're not gonna see an actual number on that line item?
No, right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to cross-reference this with the loss that you provided us, because some of these numbers, and I understand, we don't have the actual transfer from retained earnings.
I don't
Okay.
have that with me.
Would that be
Well,
more or less in line with the sheet that you sent us?
I was gonna say, I take that back.
Okay.
You do have it, because in essence, when there's a loss, it's coming from the retained earnings,
Right.
because it's the only place it can come
Sure.
from.
Sure.
So, the second line that I provided to you, is the three main sources of revenue. It doesn't include the percentage that the county reimburses us. I left that out because I was just trying to give you all an idea as to what we have control over from the revenue perspective.
Okay.
So that's not a true picture of revenue, because you do have to take into consideration the reimbursement from Hartford County.
Sure. As I'm looking at the delta there between what we're taking in and what we're bringing out, I'm noticing that at least in 2023 and 2024, we actually did a little bit better than anticipated. We budgeted for a larger transfer from retained earnings than we actually had to make. Am I reading that correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
And in 2024, we did as well.
Right, so in
think you
both
said that.
23 and 24,
Yes.
we did better than we budgeted for. We lost less, so to
Correct.
speak. So I guess my question is, because we lost less, why are we then budgeting this year for a larger loss?
It's how the numbers worked.
Okay.
It's just how the numbers worked. So you estimate your your expenses and you estimate
Sure,
your revenue based
sure.
on history and the kind of where we were when the budget was put together for '25, and the difference.
Sure.
And so it's not, there's not a lot of thought that goes into that piece, because it's just the difference between your
Sure.
other two pieces.
And I completely understand that. I'll stand down for now, and because I think I'll get a better idea of, because really the transfer is the difference between true revenues, true expenses.
Mhm.
Once we go through expenses, maybe I'll be
Mhm.
able to refine my
Mhm.
questions
Okay.
a little bit more.
Okay, all right.
Lisa.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chismar, based on your earlier question related to lease fees under page 222, 903000102, must be a typo. We only have one parcel of property. It's 1,324 square feet. I checked the lease that was previous to the one that we're rewriting now, both mold together into one piece of property. So the only thing I can deduce is that must be a typo. It's one parcel.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move to page 227. And again, the expenses are broken down into three pieces, so I'm going to go over the other first, and then move on to lots and meters, and then to the garage, and then I'll turn it over to Steve. So three accounts here worth mentioning: the parking fine charges. We work with a vendor named Passport who does the processing of our parking tickets. We pay them a 19% collection fee. That contract has been renewed for a 3-year period and has some subsequent renewals as well. That percentage used to be either 20 or 21%, so we were able to negotiate it down a little bit more. We pay them almost $20,000 for that service. The debt service for parking enforcement, again, $73. It's interest only, unlike the general fund. Where in the general fund, you see principal and interest. Here, you're only going to see the interest payments. This debt expires in 2027, so fiscal year '28. And then depreciation is going to be very similar to that, with $135,000. Again, it works just like the sewer fund does. So that is, you have a large building in the parking garage that's depreciated over a very long period of time. So that is going to be the majority of that number. On page 228, this transfer to general fund lots works just like the sewer fund does. The same reasoning is behind how it's calculated. The personnel costs are a little bit different with bringing in the planning department to a certain extent, but also the police department. Whereas they really don't have a piece of the sewer fund, they do with the parking fund. The majority of the other overhead costs are similar to the sewer fund, and we break this transfer number down again between lots and the parking garage. So this is the lots side of it at $208,000. On page 229, the insurance for the parking garage, it's for the garage itself, and our sweeper. It's budgeted at $37,000. Account 0835 is the capital repairs that I mentioned on the revenue side, where the county reimburses us for 2/3 of that to go into a improvement reserve account. And then we have two debt services, the JCI project with the energy retrofit lighting upgrade that will mature in 2032. And then the parking garage sweeper, where the final payment will be made in fiscal year '27, and that's the one that the county reimburses us 2/3 of that cost. On page 230 is the transfer description, but the one that relates to the parking garage. So again, very similar to lots. Personnel is just a slightly tweaked there, but all of the rest of the costs are exactly the same. And the allocation on that transfer number is on the last two pages, 231 and 232 of the parking fund. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's going to go over his expense accounts.
Thanks, Lisa. And as before, I'm going to try to just hit on the line items that are relevant to me, and just to hit a few. Page 28 and 29. So we got the lots and meters on page 228, and operating expense and maintenance of lots total $9,517 to maintain and operate the public parking lots in town. This includes parking meter repairs, purchase of signs, and other equipment and materials to operate the town-owned lots. Is there any questions on those lots? It's things like paint for writing lines, patching for potholes, work on the parking meters, and things of that nature. So moving on to page 229, the parking garage, of course, we all have talked about it the last few months, has approximately 1,010 spaces and 2 elevators, and require regular inspection and maintenance. So the regular day-to-day operating cost is budgeted at $57,881 a year, which includes the cost of an elevator maintenance contract, all utilities, signs, sweeper brushes, light bulbs. The elevators are cleaned daily during the week, and the garage is swept and vacuumed from top down approximately 26 times each year. And just to remember, the county reimburses the town for 67.2 of all the costs to operate the garage. And basically, that's all I really have for the expenses, unless you guys have any questions.
Okay, so I was looking over the spreadsheet a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the only, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the only revenue account that took a significant dive from 2025 to 2026 is that county share operations reimbursement, which is tied to expenses.
Correct.
So I guess I'm just still struggling to wrap my head around how our biggest revenue hit was in an account that's just tied to expenses, which should tell me then that our expenses in that category would be lower.
Mm-hmm.
How we wound up with a $30,000 bigger loss. That's the part that I'm struggling with.
I mean, I understand. I'd have to, I was doing the same thing while Steve was talking to try to.
I didn't talk long enough, Lisa, I'm sorry.
Talk long enough.
I'm very expeditious.
Thanks, Steve. No, it's all good. I would have to look at this a little bit more to answer your question. It's not a good answer for me to say the numbers are the numbers.
Right.
I know that's not a good answer for you. I understand that. But you have very few revenue accounts and their total is X, and you have all these expenses and their total is Y, and the difference is what you're short. That's the short answer, not a good answer.
Right.
But, it could.
Yeah, I'm really just trying to pop the hood and figure out how we got there, because the top line, a qualitative analysis of the top line doesn't make sense to me. I understand that the quantitative analysis bears that out, but I'm really just trying to get deeper to understand why we're moving in the direction that we're moving, and that is what I don't yet have an answer to, because I haven't been able to find it, and I'm kind of befuddled, really.
And I'm looking at the list of our, outstanding topics, many of which have been finished. But one of them says, if the parking garage was fully leased, and that was one of our questions, what would the revenue be? It would be an additional $51,660, but we're projecting being $140,000 underwater in the coming budget year.
Right.
So even if the garage was fully leased, we still have a problem.
Right. It doesn't pay for itself.
It doesn't pay for itself.
And it likely can't pay for itself.
No, because even if fully leased, we're still going to be, even if it turns out not to be 140, it's going to be some
Right.
large number, large-ish number.
And unlike the Armory, which as we know is a community center that is not for profit, this unfortunately is an enterprise fund that is run as a business.
That is the difference.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, we can't subsidize it with taxpayer dollars.
Mm-mm. That is correct.
So, this is sort of a basic question. When we say retained earnings,
Mhm.
where are we pulling from?
So that's your equity.
Mm-hmm.
You're pulling from that. You're reducing that equity every time you have a loss.
So do we?
Once there isn't any money left, you've got to find another source, and that's
So that's my question: is do we have a projection for how quickly that red line is nearing the x-axis?
I
You
was going
have-
to ask what the balance was.
Yeah.
To put it in a different way.
that's where I was going.
Yeah.
As of the end of fiscal year '24, it was 1.7 million.
And do we have a comparison to what that was? I mean, I could do the math for the last 5 years and get the answer, but I guess my
Mhm.
question is,
Mhm.
could you put that into some context for us? Like, you know, as far as having $1.7 million in equity, sounds like a big number.
Mhm.
That's a very large, expensive building, might not be a big number.
Mhm.
Can you contextualize that?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not one that you want to consider to see decrease
No.
every year, right? Because this is telling you there's a problem. So when you see something like this happening year after year after year, the idea is something's broke, how do we fix it? It is broke. It needs to be fixed. We're not bringing in enough revenue. Will we be okay for, the next 10 years? Yeah, you're not going to run out, but you also don't know what's on the horizon and what's going to come up.
Right.
What's going to need to be repaired. I mean, Steve is working on a project now, design work on enclosing the Pennsylvania side, Steve? Stairwell?
Yes, and I got a number late in the process and decided that we should not put it in this year's budget because it was about $100,000 more than I anticipated to enclose the stairwell on the Pennsylvania Avenue side. The estimate to do that is $257,000. And I just got it in like a week ago.
Now, the county will pay 67% of that, but we're still on the hook for a third of that.
Right.
So that's what I'm referring to is in the future, we don't know. Steve does a great job with staying ahead of issues, because that's what you want to do when it comes to maintenance. We certainly don't want to get behind the 8 ball on that. But you also have to have the revenue to do it. So yes, 1.7 seems like a big number, but I think you might have said it best. That's a big building. There's a lot that needs to be maintained. We did, I don't know, Steve, can you remember how many years ago we did that major capital work on the building?
It probably, if you can believe, it's probably been 12 years, and it was $1 million project to fix the structure.
Yep.
Structural components, spalling concrete on metal, chipping out all the concrete, fixing the metal, taking the rust away, just doing a lot of that important structural maintenance, and it's taken us a long way. The repairs are still holding up really well, so we're in good positive shape. Things in the future that we could really look into doing is scarifying the concrete surface and put another protective sealer on the concrete, and put new caulking on a lot of the joints and so forth of that nature. But so far, they're holding up pretty well. Just to add one other little tidbit, of course, we all know what kind of happened in town last week on Thursday. So there has been a little bit of movement, people suggesting that we do some new improvements to the job to prevent future incidences. And, so we have to keep that in the back of our head if that really becomes something that we want to pursue. Not saying that we do. The county, if the county comes along and says, yeah, we would like to do that, so we've got to keep that in mind too for major projects.
So
Lisa,
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
what was
You're good.
the total that is in that one account is what for the future capital things is what,
163,000.
160? So that's a good little fallback.
It is, and that's something that's written into the agreement that both the town and the county just have to both agree to utilize those funds for any kind of capital work, which we have used in the past, not recently. It's been quite a few years where we've dipped into that account. I know we probably got a little off topic, but important information, again, just examples to think about. We don't know what's on the horizon. We don't know what we don't know yet. So I can sit here and say that, yeah, I mean, we can handle losses for the next 10 years, but I don't know what's on the horizon to be able to.
I mean, it seems to me that the core of the issue is that we're responsible for a building that is economically unviable.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's the said in one sentence what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, when you're, let's see.
It looks to me like this
What-
is going to be the 7th year running that the parking fund has been running at a loss.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
it totals maybe about $365,000 or something like that.
Mhm.
Because the garage is actually being subsidized by all of the fines and the meters from around town. I mean, most of our expenses are coming from that garage. It's not
Correct.
coming from keeping up a parking meter, keeping up a lot, and that's actually where we're getting our money from.
That's correct.
So that even puts a finer point on just how much of a cash sieve the building is.
Yeah, I mean, when we're only, we have 193 spaces available in the garage for lease. We factor in a 30% overbooking at each one of our lots. So when you factor that in, you have 251 permits that are available in the parking garage. We're leasing 70. I mean, that's, you can't sustain that.
Right.
You just can't. I mean, our meter revenue has taken a hit over the years. Since about fiscal year 17, we were at 185,000. We're projecting fiscal year 25 to be 128,000. $60,000. So that's meters throughout the town, not just the garage. But yeah, when you slice this all up, it's the parking garage is what the issue is, and you're right. Everything else is fairly subsidizing it, and it's not cutting it as it is. There aren't enough leases in the garage to be able to help with the issue.
Could I add just two thoughts? I know I'm not an accountant, and I know I'm not focusing on it from that perspective, so this might be a statement just more from an average citizen than as the Director of Administration for the town of Bel Air. But one of the things that the town of Bel Air does have, because of the parking garage, is a wonderful walkable community that you never have to worry about, where am I going to park? If you think about visiting other towns and cities where parking is scarce or a problem, people just, I know I personally just won't go. I mean, it's such a hassle to park in some of those towns or cities when there is such a parking problem, or the parking is so ridiculously expensive and the distance to get from point A to point B is inconvenient. It makes me think about not even going, or going somewhere else. So the parking garage, while it's true, it's not meeting all those things, it does provide the community with an incredible service, and it does provide a future opportunity for our town to grow. And of course, we want the town to grow smartly. We want to continue the live, work, and play that we currently enjoy. But because of the parking garage, it can. I don't know if that's, it's just a statement off the top of my head, so I might be missing a bigger picture here that I'm unaware of, but That's one of the things I think of when I think of the parking garage.
And it is, it's a facility that provides parking, so after 5 o'clock, everything is free. So that's the majority of the time where everybody's coming into town. It's wear and tear on the facilities, i.e. the parking garage, and there is no revenue that's being generated from that at those times.
What was the impetus behind when this was decided to be set up as an enterprise fund? I mean, what's the accounting practice that dictated that? Because the points that Mike were making were strong arguments in favor of why we should subsidize this with taxpayer dollars, because it's a community good. It's how we treat the Armory, but we can't. So my question is, why do we treat it the way that we do? Why is it the way it is?
It was before my time, if you can believe
Sure,
that.
sure, yeah.
It fits, it fits the definition.
Mhm.
I mean, the Armory fits the definition as well, to be perfectly honest. So, that's a good question. Certainly something that I can look into and discuss with the auditors.
I think that may need to be potentially part of some long-term solution, because you're right. When I say economically unviable, Mike, I mean strictly speaking as if I was the CEO of this business, I'd be setting my hair on fire and jumping into the Chesapeake Bay.
Yep.
Right? I mean, this is, you're absolutely right. This is a sinking ship. And I don't have the business tycoon in me to figure out how to fix the business issue. So it may be, I mean, we've got I think we're going to have a lot of different options to look at, but one of the options that we should consider is just not treating it as a business when it simply cannot survive as a business. So that would be just one of many possible answers to throw out there.
Sure.
I would like to add that we also give away our parking for free, Every day after 5, we're not charging. Every Saturday and Sunday, we're not charging. And, those weekends when we have everyone in town, every parking space filled because of an event, it's typically happening on a Saturday when nobody's charging for parking. If you go to Ocean City, they charge 24/7, 365 days a year for parking.
Yeah.
It's
And
just
then-
food for thought. I mean, you talk about running it like a business, an average CEO wouldn't give away their stuff for free.
That's correct. And we've had discussions on the Pennsylvania lot. That's why we've looked at that lot, as we've talked about, is heavily abused. And that's during the day, and we're not making any money from that. And again, it is the maintenance and the wear and tear and the cost that goes into maintaining that lot, and we are not receiving any revenues because we're not charging even during the day, like the rest of our lots. There was a reason why we couldn't do that years ago, because it was within an agreement. That agreement, as I mentioned, expired quite a while ago. And so, again, based on staff's discussions, we've talked about it in our parking fund meetings for a bit, and decided it was viable to bring forth to you all for discussion. And that's another $50-some thousand, $51,000. That's nope, it is not. So that would be above and beyond what you see in the budget.
Yeah, I think there are inroads to make in terms of
Yeah.
capturing revenues that we're just not
Yeah.
exploring and have
Francis is
never
right.
explored. We've always been, not unlike raising taxes, the town has always been reticent to increase parking fees and fines.
Is the Noah Hillman garage in Annapolis, that owned by the city of Annapolis, the Noah Hillman one?
The downtown.
It's right downtown, it's very close to the water. Right,
Right behind
right.
Chicken
It's,
Roost.
it's the one I always park
Behind
at, so.
Chicken Roost.
Yeah. I don't believe so.
Okay. Anyway, what I was thinking is
But that's a
that
good
perhaps
question.
we should look
That's a good
at some
question.
other municipal parking garages and see how they're run. Are they a separate enterprise fund? Are they an after 5 o'clock charge as well on the weekends? You know, maybe we need to take a look at how we're running the parking garage, and maybe learn from other municipalities, see if they're underwater every year, you know, or why. I mean, certainly the city of Annapolis is a completely different ballgame. But it was the only municipality where I go, where I know I'm going to have to park in that parking garage, because I'm not going to be able to find a space that's metered for long enough for, you know, me to go to a hearing that may take a couple of hours. So it is a different animal, and I'm sure there's very high demand for that parking garage. Their rates are way higher than our rates. They're like $350 a month, and I think like $25 a day, which I think you reach the max charge after like 5 hours or something. So I'm not suggesting that we,
Yeah.
you know, but maybe we could take a look at them and see, do they charge 24 hours a day? Do they charge on weekends? Do they charge after 5, you know?
Yeah. I mean, even just looking at our $35 a month lease fee.
Okay, that is like
That's
pitiful.
peanuts. I mean,
That is pitiful, right?
That's peanuts.
Right.
So that's another option.
I remember paying $100 a month, and I thought I was getting, like, I was so thankful to pay for it in a parking garage when I worked in Washington DC. And that was like the early 80s, you know, so.
So, you know,
Thank you.
I think there's several options, nothing that we have to decide tonight.
No,
I mean, honestly, we don't.
and we don't intend to. It was just part of, like, I know Jake and I have had this conversation.
Okay.
You know, the parking garage, it's been underwater every year that I've been
Yep.
doing a budget on the board. So, you know, it's a real issue, and at some point, which I think is maybe now, after the budget is put to bed.
Yeah.
To think about
Yep.
looking at the numbers, looking at what other places do, trying to figure out a solution to this, because I know 1.7 million seems like a lot, but we've run through 365,000 in the last, you know, 5 years or so with no end in sight, and there could be projects that we need to do.
Yes, because that's really the last thing you want to do is to not do those projects.
Right.
You're talking about a safety issue, and,
Right.
and
There's
again,
an
a
elevator,
building.
there's stairwells,
Right,
there's.
that we
you know,
don't own 100% either, so the county has a large say in what we're doing
Right.
from a capital standpoint as well. So, I think, again, there are, several points of discussion on the parking fund that we can certainly we certainly should come back to. Soon after the budget, we can add that to, maybe the outstanding list that you all have. And I can start to do some research with other municipalities on those items that you mentioned, Paula, for sure. Those are easy phone calls to find out information on.
Yeah, and I can't think of any place besides Annapolis, because I go there and I pay to park in the parking garage, but I'm wondering if there's any
Okay.
smaller jurisdictions that have parking garages that we could maybe take a look at.
Angela mentioned Frederick.
Frederick,
Not smaller, but.
right,
Yeah, but
but
still.
different from Annapolis,
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
is kind of like a one-off.
Yeah, and we have a laundry list, actually, of municipalities when we call around to see what everyone is charging from a parking fine standpoint. So we're just gonna go back to that list and, you know, make phone calls to those jurisdictions. That'll be it's a great start.
Okay, so we have some thoughts on that.
Okay.
Could you sort of add to the little checklist of things to work on later this year? Would be, I'd like to see just a 5-year history of the number of leases in the parking garage over the last 5 years. Because you're saying now we're at 70? Okay, I'd like to see if there's a trend or anything on that, on not the dollars necessarily, but just the lease, since the dollars are somewhat up in the air on whether or not prices would be adjusted.
Yep.
So I want to see what the trend is on the demand on the leases. And then I'd like to see the same 5-year trend on the revenue from the meters in the parking garage.
Yep.
That
We
way
separate out.
that way I can see a 5-year trend on the meter revenue in the parking garage, and then a 5-year trend just on the number of leases, so we can gauge demand. Because one of the fundamentals of, you know, we talk about, you know, with how cheap the rate is. One of the fundamentals of economics that I adhere to is that if demand is trending down, raising prices will only further trend demand down. So, it's that's why I'd like to see that, aspect of it as well. But, thank you very much.
One other point is that not all parking garages around the Tri-County area offer leases. You know, sometimes they're just daily parking in high-volume areas. We've never advertised the fact that we lease parking spaces. We don't put it out on social media. You have to go into 4 clicks back in the town website to figure out that
Yeah, that's an
there's
excellent.
a lease
Yeah.
there to be had.
Because I was thinking earlier, Mike, that, you know, just trying to reflect on my experiences, you know, coming back to Harford County in 1999, and then, you know, spending time, you know, coming into Bel Air, you know, again, and getting to know people at the courthouse, you know, and that type of thing, trying to remember how I had to figure out where the parking garage was and sort of what the word was around the courthouse on where people park. And I talked to other attorneys in Baltimore at House, and they said where to park. And it was always kind of like, you know, try to grab some spot behind where Vagabond is now. You know, try to grab some spot over at PNC Bank and hope they don't grab you. You know, I mean, it wasn't like there's a parking garage a block away. So it took me a while to figure out how really convenient and inexpensive it was for me just to come into town on Hickory Avenue, jump into the parking garage, have my quarters ready, throw them in the meter, and run up to the courthouse, rather than buzzing around like these Towson lawyers were telling me, like, find what? Where's that spot? Where's the secret place? You know, it's like.
We actually do more advertising about our free holiday parking than we do about the parking garage in general.
And parking garages have a bad name. I mean, I can tell you when people will come to our window and maybe they got a ticket and they're asking, well, where can I park? Or do you have lease spaces, or we have vouchers for the garage. They're like, oh no, not parking in the garage. But they will walk a little further maybe to the Hickory, but they will not park in the garage.
There are people that go to Upper Chesapeake that avoid parking in that garage. That's the only other parking garage that exists in the town.
I have to say, when I would go to Baltimore City for hearings, I would prefer an open parking lot to a parking garage because of safety issues. I was concerned about, you know, there are just too many hiding spots in garages. I'm not concerned. I parked in our parking garage last week, and I'm not concerned at all about safety in there, but I do understand how people have that feeling in a parking garage.
So, Madam Chair, I already have parking on our global agenda for later this summer. We've got 3 or 4 topics that precede that, but that's a global discussion, so that'll give us some time to look into this. With going into summer schedule, unfortunately, it kind of, but it'll be discussed as we.
It's not an emergency for sure,
No,
but it's definitely be something we need to think about.
Right, but we'll have it on the agenda and plenty of time for the FY27 budget for discussion going forward.
It's not an emergency in the same way that the Titanic heading for an iceberg is not an emergency, in that, yes, we can steer the ship, we just got to start turning that wheel now.
Right.
And I agree with
Yeah.
that wholeheartedly.
But you're right, we won't hit, you know, the iceberg for, you know, the
But
actual
we can
collision
see
won't
it.
happen
We
for 10
can
years,
see
but
it.
we got to start turning
We
now.
can see it,
We
yes.
do. And in my opinion, yes, I obviously have all these conversations, but I don't want to wait. I mean, this is not something, because I think these conversations are going to take a little bit of time, and some discussion and maybe some research and homework, et cetera. But this is not something that, when we have those discussions, that we have to say, okay, well, we're going to wait till FY27 to make these changes or institute anything. It can be done at any time during the fiscal year. So that's just a point of consideration as well, is yes, you know, we're getting through the budget now. We're not going to start another budget until, you know, for a year, but let's not wait to make these types of changes until then. That's my recommendation.
It's urgent, but it's not a 911 call.
Correct.
That's
There
my
we go.
feeling. I get that it's important. And I've
Yep.
thought this every year as we go through the budget and we get to the parking garage and the parking fund and find out that we need to tap the reserves
Mhm.
again, so.
Yep.
All right,
Okay. All good on parking?
all good on parking.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Very important and very lengthy discussion. It seems that all the important ones are between this and the, pay plan update. Lots of important things to work through.
All right, so we're gonna move to special revenue fund, which is our last fund to talk about. Page 236. So special revenue fund is, like I mentioned earlier, a governmental type fund. A lot of these accounts in this fund don't lend themselves to the normal fiscal year budgeting. Whether it be some grants that are multi-year, or they are projects that are multi-year, or they're just accounts that revolve from year to year. So while the revenue and the expense amount is exactly the same for that specific account, if there is not funding in that year for that, you're not bringing in current year revenues, but you have an expense for that, you're gonna draw from their reserve account for that specific account. So each one of these accounts that you see listed here has its own individual reserve account. And it fluctuates based on whether revenues are higher than expenses. Obviously, there is no negative reserve account. If there should be, which there has been in years past, that then has to be expensed to the general fund. And I can mention a couple of those as we go through it. All right, so on 236, the first account there, the seized property, Federal Department of Justice account. This is one of our seized property accounts that the police department has. We currently have 3 forfeiture or sharing cases with the DEA that have been pending for a lot of years, right, Jack? So we're expecting those funds, hopefully in fiscal year 26, but we say that every year, and they're just not coming through. But they will eventually. So once those come through, then those monies will be spent according to specific guidelines. And the chief and I work very closely on that when it comes to spending. Is there anything you want to add with that? Okay. Moving on to account 2001, which is the Community Development Block Grant account. This is monies that is provided through the CDBG program. It's part of the federal HUD allocation to Harford County, so it's a pass-through through Harford County to us. We don't receive the money directly from the feds. We have remaining FY25 funds of about $26,000 that we're expected to use for a paving project in FY26. We don't have the FY26 allotment notification yet, but we're estimating it to be about the same, around $26,000. So that gives us about $52,000 to use towards a paving project. Now, because it's CDBG, it can only be in low-income housing areas of the town. So Angela's department gets heavily involved with that to make sure that we're meeting all of the requirements for that. Davis-Bacon is impacted as well. So the costs on the paving are a little bit higher because your contractor has to follow those requirements. The third one is, again, another seized property, but it's the Federal Treasury account, which is different from the Department of Justice. This is, we receive an allotment from the Harford County Task Force because we participate in that. It's a partnership between our police department and the task force, and so we generally receive anywhere between $25,000 and $40,000 a year. Again, spending on this is very similar to the federal DOJ money. It has to abide by the guidelines that are set out, and the chief and I, again, work closely on this account as well. On page 237, these two are grant-driven. So the Explorer Scouts, you all know all about our program. We do receive various contributions or donations throughout the year. Our summer camp is extremely popular in the summertime, and there's registration fees for that. They hold fundraising events. Their bingo is extremely popular. And the monies that are received are then spent on stuff like training and scholarships, field trips, and training equipment. But we also receive a grant from the Governor's Office of Crime Control. We're, fingers crossed, we've already submitted it for fiscal year '26. So we hope that we will receive the grant dollars again. It was significantly cut in '25 from '24. So we'll see what happens, but overall, a great program, and that grant really helps subsidize the what's spent there. The next one after that is the Culture Arts Project, which Angela's office handles. The grant is through the Maryland State Arts Council for the Arts and Entertainment District. Again, the grant's been submitted, right? Yep, the grant's been submitted. And so we will hear shortly after the fiscal year. Besides the grant, other revenues, the big one here is the Authors and Artists Holiday Gift Sale. So those totals equal just shy of $17,000. When I mentioned any negative amounts in the reserve, that could not happen, it has happened a few times, like I mentioned in maybe the memorials account. If there isn't enough money in the reserve, but your expenses are more than your current year revenues, it gets charged to Kevin, to his planning account. We're not talking about anything substantial. It's also happened with the auxiliary police. They have their own vehicle, they have personnel that have uniforms with the auxiliary, but they're really not they used to bring in a little bit more revenue through donations and contributions. So if they don't do that, then those expenses have to be charged to the general fund. Again, doesn't happen very often. We're not talking tens of thousands of dollars. Generally, it's under $2,000, if that, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that it does happen from time to time. Was there anything else in special revenue? The rest is pretty standard, nothing really going on. We don't have any major grants this year from Community Legacy or Community Parks and Playground grant for FY26.
My question was, I see we've got $30,000 outstanding from the Department of Justice, and there was a reference to it's been like years.
Yes, ma'am. It's they're called DAGs. So when there were past seizures, whether it's jewelry, whether it's cash, basically it goes into a system we call equitable sharing accountability. It's like a portal, and it sits there, and we've reached out to them several times. And from what I understand, with my contact at the sheriff's office, they have some DAGs that have been sitting there for a lot longer than us. So it's just we don't know what's going on.
Just don't know when we'll ever get that money.
No, ma'am.
How about the federal treasury seized property? Do we really expect to get that money in the next budget year?
With the task force? Yes, ma'am.
The
we will get that.
32,000.
Yes, we will definitely get that. I think it's around July, something like that, that the disbursements come. And what happens, what the deciding factor in that is any seizures.
Mhm.
And we have an investigator assigned to the Harford County Drug Task Force, and that's a That's a unit comprised of allied officers from all the allied agencies in the county. And basically, the sheriff's office takes a certain percentage. We get 10%, and so do the other jurisdictions of all the seizures that happen in that fiscal year. So it could be 30,000. One year, one of our investigators got a good seizure, and we ended up getting like 60 or 70,000. So that's, yeah, that could be.
Right,
Could
but
be
that
more
one,
than
that
that.
one is money that we actually
Yes,
expect
ma'am.
to get, as opposed to the DAG money, which is out there sitting.
Yeah,
Um,
we're still waiting. I think we did just get one small disbursement. It's like very small.
It was
That-
very small.
It's just like, where did that come?
We
where did
haven't
that- why did-
received it yet.
Yeah, it's like,
I think it was $700.
All right, well, we won't have to go far to spend that, but we will take it. My other question was, do we have this money already designated to be spent on something because the cameras might qualify?
they could qualify. We are looking for, we do want to purchase some active shooter response bags out of that. They're not that much money, but it has to be permissible expenses that's allowed for an ESAC. So we have to, when we want to purchase something out of it, and that's where Lisa and I come in, and Eddie, we all say, hey, is that and actually Marty, we look at the guide. It's a federal book, and it's like hundreds of pages, and we make sure that it's a permissible expense, because if you wanted to buy like firearms or something like that, probably wouldn't let you.
Right, I know
Yeah.
they have.
Food for
rules.
events, you can't do that.
Yeah, they have rules, but I was wondering if we could use that money for the cameras? Or do you haven't, or have
For
you got a plan for the whole
The Verkada
32,000?
cameras?
The Verkada cameras, mhm.
Yeah, we don't have enough in there to spend, and it's kind of, we also use it to help with the lease of a vehicle, a
Okay.
task force vehicle. So we do have some obligations against that account that we use.
And when we were going through the budget process, that's always something that Eddie, Chief and I review with his budget requests is, can this be bought with forfeiture? Can this be bought with forfeiture? So we already agreed on a couple of things that weren't discussed because they're not in his budget
Mhm.
that he took out, knowing that
The
he could
forfeiture
purchase
money.
them for forfeiture. So
Got it.
you're just not seeing
We're
that
spoke,
piece
it's
of it.
spoken for that. money.
Correct.
All right, thank you. That's what I was interested in.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So one of the great things about that account is if there is something like, let's say we had, demonstrations, protests, we had to go out and get riot gear, it's good for stuff like that. If we have like, not emergency, but things that we needed like right away that we couldn't get through other line items, we could use that account for.
Understood.
Yep.
Anything else on special revenue? Okay. So you ready to go to the outstanding list? Okay.
Question. But before we get there, was the question on the presentations we had tonight, and I can't remember how we addressed it. It was the Hartford County Education Fund, how they asked for 25, and we reduced that to 1,000.
Yep.
What was the rationale for that?
Let's see.
I think we're flat funding both them and Lassos.
Yes.
Did we bump
Lassos,
that back up?
Lassos did not request an increase. So they are flat funded just because they didn't ask for an increase. Education Foundation, I think,
I don't
they
have,
re-
yeah, I don't have the numbers for last year, what they did.
they requested 2,500 last year, and you all reduced it to 1,000. So
Okay.
we maintained flat funding with them, really based on the conversations that we had during the budget year from last year. So it's up for discussion.
So prior to that, in 23 and 24, we gave them 2,500. Is that correct? And then in 25, it was reduced to 1,000.
Yep, you all had discussion and wanted to reduce them to 1,000.
I believe that was part of finding the money for the Army Alliance, if I recall.
That's correct.
So looking at our
Okay. I mean, it's a
outstanding
good
items list, we have $40,000 that we're postponing the bike lanes on Bolton Street from Tollgate Road, correct? Lisa, that's number 11.
Yes, that's correct. That's
Okay.
been
And then we
pulled.
have 20,000 that we still have to decide on the bike lane on McPhail Road.
Correct.
And then we have 10,000 in savings that we've already decided on the trail from Giles to Maitland.
Correct.
We have 2,000 that we are still playing with, and then the 50,000 for planning's vehicle is from capital reserve, so we wouldn't actually have that to spend.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we
So
also
that's sort
have,
of looking at, go ahead.
do we not also have 3,000 from the active shooter bags that we're paying for this FY?
Yep, that's a savings.
So that's a savings.
Yep.
That's item 24.
Okay.
24, 25, and 26 are also impact, I'm sorry, 21 as well.
21 is an impact.
Yes,
What was that impact? Do we
it's
know
the
that?
additional cost for the elections budget that Michael mentioned during his presentation.
I mean,
You
what
might
was
have
that
been
cost?
out. It's $5,300. It's
5,300?
an additional $5,300. 24 is a savings, 25 is a new spend, 20, excuse me, 26 is a new spend.
Right, we need to find a 25K for that.
Correct. I don't believe there's anything on the front page, 1 through 10. Well, the fire company. The fire company is the only thing that's a new spend, number 8.
Right, so that's the savings.
I mean, and I'm
Right.
assuming, it's probably not good to assume, but number 9, you know, we did get the answer that you all requested, but are you all fine with keeping that in the budget?
I am, yes. I'm satisfied.
I am too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought so, but I don't think I ever
Right.
asked that
I am.
question, so I just wanted to be clear.
So 12 is still an iffy on 12?
12, you all, yes, 12 has not been decided,
Has not been decided, and neither has 14,
correct?
which is a 2,000, okay.
To be honest, I don't think we're gonna make any progress on that one. I've
I would
requested-
agree with you.
I've requested a meeting, but they've not gotten back with me, so in the interest of time, we may have to just postpone it.
So that would be another 2K savings, right?
If you all want, I mean, don't feel like you have to pull it because you need the money for something else. I can certainly find $2,000 somewhere if it's needed. So if you want to,
I don't think we wanted to move forward unless we had
okay,
a conversation with John Carroll.
Correct.
At
And
least I
Yeah.
recall that being.
That's-
the-
That
yeah.
was
that's fine.
our discussion, and I just think based on some of the things that have happened recently with the gate being up and all that, that they probably are not going to be interested. Not that you shouldn't talk to them about it, but we'll see.
Right, I had planned to talk to them regardless of the decision, because
Right.
if we didn't do it this year, next
Right,
year,
right.
they're integral because of the easement we require.
Right.
That's.
And I know it's difficult because we have to deal with the
Right.
archdiocese, so I would just take it out. It's
Yep.
$2,000. If it all works, it works, and we can find it later, but I would take it out now. So I currently have 40,000 plus 10,000 plus 2,000 plus 5,300 for the elections, Lisa, would that be right?
Yes,
Okay. I thought that was a plus. We paid for it in this year, or we need to find 5,300 for that?
5,300 has to be funded in FY
Okay,
'26.
5,300, gotcha.
So that's a plus. right?
So-
And the 2,400 for the Homestead Park porta pot we have to find?
Correct.
And what about the 9,500 for the reimbursed personnel costs, waiving that?
It was not in the budget to begin with,
Okay, so it's,
So-
that's no change. Got it.
correct.
And we need to find 2,500 for the Alcian Park item?
25,000.
I'm sorry, 25,000. I wrote 25,000 in. Optimistically said 2,500.
And then 12 is still up for discussion.
Correct. And that's 20,000, so we've got 40, 10, 2. So we have 52, right?
55 plus the potential.
Oh, I'm sorry, the three and the
For
three.
savings? And,
Yeah, I
yeah, the
left out
active
the
shooter
shooter
bags.
bags.
They're
Okay, so
being
we have
purchased this
55
year.
in savings. Right, potentially 75 because we got that 20,000 hanging out there.
Then we were looking at the planning department's vehicle.
Right, but that is coming from capital reserves.
coming from capital
So if we
reserves, okay.
cancel it, we do not have
doesn't-
$50,000 to
Yeah.
spend.
That's not discretionary, right? Okay.
While we're on that, though, I guess, I'm in favor of getting the new vehicle. I don't see vehicle prices being any better a year from now than they are. I know the vehicle's still functioning, but it is fairly old. I mean, it's, how old?
2015.
2015. So I'm just thinking if we kick the can on the capital investment there to a later year, are we missing an opportunity to?
The reason I would kick the can down the road some is it's not having any mechanical problems. Like the IT vehicle is having some problems. This one
Right.
was just listed as having some dents and scrapes. And I actually looked at it and it doesn't look any worse than many of the things that I drive or have driven in the past. So if it was undependable, I'd feel differently, but it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
And it's only used for around town, mostly, not that Kevin
I
would
think
drive it to
there are
Annapolis or
some
something.
trips out of
That's
town.
Sure.
Where your vehicle.
Annapolis, Ocean
how
City.
far is your-
Annapolis, Ocean City, that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I
just-
think it'll last another year. It's just, it was on the list. Get replaced 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's just a difference in philosophy. I typically try to jump out before I start nickel and diming on repairs, but also I'm just a little bit concerned about where vehicle prices are gonna be, due to national, international events.
Anybody's guess.
I mean,
think,
more
yeah.
so this year than I have been in the past. But
True.
probably wrong, and that's why I shouldn't be out there, playing the stock market. But but I'm not recommending anybody invest on my comments. The disclaimer, this is not an investment advice. But, I just,
Can we get a trade? But do we trade these vehicles in, or we?
Our
auction?
estimated
They go on
cost
gov
was
deals,
like
I believe.
$8,000, which I think is very low because based on what, I just looked at like CarMax and stuff. Used cars, even though it is an older car with low mileage like that, would go for a fairly pretty penny.
Yeah, we typically are fairly conservative with the estimates for the sale.
Do we ever shop something like that to a CarMax or a Carvana or anything? We just always auction it?
We've auctioned them at Gov Deals,
Mhm.
oh, gosh. How long now, Steve? Yeah.
And once a year have auctions at our site, but they never brought the same amount of money. that we
Right,
did.
I know that was, but just seeing the $8,000, I'm like, I think that's terribly low for that car.
No, I mean, we have not gone to CarMax or,
Yeah. Because I know we looked at CarMax for the price, for the used IT vehicle, and
Jones will pay
I know
$500
just
for
from
cars.
personal experience, CarMax does not give you a very good trade-in.
they don't.
Or even if, because they will buy your car right out,
they
but
will.
it's never as good as if you advertise it on your own and through word of mouth and try to get the actual value. I know what you're talking about, trying to get the actual value. You're almost giving up a certain amount of money out of the service of the convenience, I think. But I agree, if we could maybe get a little bit more for that.
Yeah, 8,000 just seemed very low. And I think I went to CarMax to price, cars to see what a semi-equivalent car would go for. Well, it looks like we have about 57.7 that we're looking for, and we have about 55 in savings.
I've got 59.7
All right.
additional compared to $55,000 savings. You all don't need to find the difference if that's where you want to stand. I have no problem with that. But I do need a decision on number 12.
I'm a no on number 12.
I'm a no on number 12 as well. I
Yeah.
was struggling with why I wasn't comfortable with bike lanes, and that article that I circulated from Forbes. I know there are many arguments on the other side, but there are just, it just boggles the mind that traffic engineering would put a car next to a lane with a bike and then have cars be able to turn across that lane. It's just so terribly dangerous. I think, would you do that with a motorcycle? And I just drove from Northern Virginia last night, and I swear every one of those tip board signs said, "Look twice for motorcyclists." That's like, must be the theme of the month or something, because the weather's nicer and you have more motorcycles. And bicycles are even less visible than a motorcycle is to a motorist. I just feel it's just setting everybody up for a disaster and a terrible accident for the bicyclist. The person in the car is really not going to be hurt, but they'll carry that for the rest of their life. I hate to put more and more of those out there where there are so many entrances to businesses and, people coming and going, and then there's crossing the intersection. How does a bicyclist from a bicycle lane make a left turn at an intersection? It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, I will say I certainly, for two reasons, oppose this particular item. The first is safety related, particularly as it relates to connecting across Route 24. I have a lot of grave concerns about that. But the second is just merely practical. I'm not certain, and I know that the state of Maryland is headed this way because I've seen the state of Maryland's Department of Transportation require bike lanes in the middle of nowhere, Route 1, because their goal is to, connect everything up so that bikes become one of the commercial modes of transportation of the future. I'm just not sure that that's a viable plan. I don't think that that's how this nation is designed. I don't think that that's how people choose to get around. And I definitely don't think that we are seeing, in planning we talk about desire paths a lot. I don't think that we're seeing anywhere near close to the required traffic to justify this expense. And so for that reason, I oppose this expansion, and I really oppose expansions of bike lanes anywhere where there isn't a clear need for them, particularly as it relates to making recreational uses easier and safer, which is a very narrow number of uses. They do exist, but in this instance, particularly with it crossing 24, I support taking it out of the budget.
And under the law in the state of Maryland, a bike is a car. You are traveling on the same roads as a car. I actually drove on Baltimore City roads, major roads, Frankfurt Avenue, Blair Road, with big city buses when I was 13 before I had a driver's license, because I know Angela's making a face over there. Helmets hadn't been invented yet. It maybe wasn't the wisest thing, but I'm unscathed, and I was careful, and the motorists were careful, and it was the only way I could really, I guess I could have taken the bus to my grandmother's house, but it was my preferred mode of transportation to my grandmother's house to have lunch with her and watch the afternoon stories, and to go to the library, which was air conditioned because my house was not. So that was, I had a bike, it was free, I didn't have to wait for the bus. I took it, and I know there's been a change in thinking, and the bike paths have come into, bike lanes, but unless it's like a mom and pop trail, a bike is gonna have to deal with cars. So I say just pretend you're a car, be out there, be smart, wear a helmet, be careful, and I am now not using that as my preferred mode of transportation because I have a driver's license. But, it's still fun to ride a bike, but I would never, again, ride a bike down like US Route 1 or on 24. It's just, I just don't, I value my health more than that. But I just say, if you're going to use it, then you're going to have to deal with cars. Let's just make it your car.
Well, I'm persuaded by the comments of Commissioner Taylor and Madam Chair on that, and would also recommend we don't fund that.
Yep, I'm on board with that. And just for the record, that's from Atwood to Maryland 24, not Tollgate to 24. Is that correct? I think right.
So I think the last remaining hard decision is the planning department's vehicle, Lisa?
that one. If you want to go back and have a discussion on the Harford County Education Foundation contribution, and then if you have any further questions on the Verkada camera system.
And did we make a decision on the Pennsylvania lot? I mean,
No.
like,
Is that in the budget? Do we?
It is not in the
Right.
budget.
That's what I
yeah,
thought,
okay.
so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in favor of leaving it out. I just wanted to make sure that we sort of
I'm in favor of leaving it out.
after that important conversation we just had, I feel as though I'll just say this about it. I feel as though we need to look at this problem globally and holistically, and this is a small plug in a very big hole, and I think we would be better served attacking this
When we discuss
when
the
we have a
whole-
strategy.
I agree.
Yeah, we don't need to make.
All right, and we don't need to do it because it's not in the budget, so
Right.
we don't need
Correct.
to do it today. The Verkada system, did we get something? What we're looking for is, if it's $226,000 this year, what's it going to be next year? Do we have to pay for anything for software updates? What is, Aberdeen uses it in the sheriff's office?
Do you want me? Yeah, so this will be good for 5 years. The reoccurring cost will be $40 a month per camera
Okay,
in that 5-year period. Now, we're trying to figure out if we can pay that 5-year cost up front, and these are Verizon SIM cards. And we're trying to work around that the best we can, because for some of the infrastructure that we're going to post these on, we can use Ethernet cable. And that will suck up some of the costs for that reoccurring stuff. So probably about 13 cameras that we're looking at right now, and we're trying to, it's still kind of up in the air. It's, we've got some questions, and again, we're trying to factor all the cost in with the contractors. But I think we'll be just fine with the number that you allowed for us in that budget. We'll be okay with that. But again, $40 a camera per month. We're looking, right at around $6,240 a year, and then for 5 years, and that's, again, it's between 10 and 15 cameras. You're looking at around $30,000 for 5 years. That's the reoccurring cost, and that's capital only. That's not the personnel that are watching the cameras and things like that.
So I think we've got like 10 cameras in the budget. I think it's 10
He can probably get more than that.
out of this,
Yeah.
the 220?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
Okay.
That's
so-
what I'm talking about. So that's,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So, Chief talked about the possibility of paying it up, the 5 years up front from a accounting perspective. That won't work. The latter 4 years are considered prepaid costs, and we match revenues and expenses from an accounting perspective. So I would only bank on 1 year at a time, even if we can pay it up front. If they're gonna give us a discount for it, sure. We will do that, and then we won't budget for those 5 years. It's only gonna be 1 year at a time. If they're not gonna give us any type of discount, then we just do 1 year at a time.
that's what I would do. Maintenance on the cameras, is that covered under
That's
our?
all covered,
all
all
covered?
covered under contract.
Okay,
And I think there were some questions about invasion of privacy and such. And we're going to have a policy, and I'm sure you're familiar, Madam Mayor, with the City Watch program. And it's going to be very similar to the policy that they have. And they touch on the invasion of privacy. And, basically, if you use that camera system for something that you're not supposed to use it for, I mean, it could even lead to criminal charges. And it's not, people, I think they're going to avoid doing something like that. So, I mean, there's going to be policy, and we'll keep a close eye on it.
I know I had a lot of those concerns initially. After speaking with the chief at length, my concerns about that have been satisfied, that this is the best way forward. You're never going to be able to minimize that risk. I feel like we've definitely we've minimized it, and the department will minimize it just as well as they can, and will take every precaution to ensure that our data is safe and our folks are safe, and that nobody has anything on a government server or private server, no footage of them that shouldn't be on a government private server. So my concerns have been satisfied.
glad to hear that.
Madam Chair, also, I discussed with the chief at length, yours and my discussion about alternative sources of funding. We have tried with these larger scale businesses in the past to no avail. At the ground level, they tell us, sure. Get to the corporate level, they say, nah, not so much. So we'll continue pursuing that, but I have no optimism or hope that they're going to contribute to the program,
And why should they?
but we'll try.
Back to the back page then. The planning vehicle.
Everybody was okay with the Vercara cameras as they are currently in the budget?
I'm in favor of that, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Then we're on to the back page, which is the planning vehicle, $50,000. And I would like to kick the can down the road, since it's not having any problems currently, and it's got pretty low mileage.
You know,
I'm
I
good with going forward. I'm good with going forward with it, just because I think the vehicle costs are only going to go up.
Maybe.
You know, tariffs or not, they're only going to go up. We're going to get a good return potentially on what the vehicle we have now, a better return on that, and it's a 10-year-old car, so.
And it's also going from an Escape to an Explorer? Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that we were trying to do is we were trying to do a hybrid, a little lower gas cost. Yeah. Escape to a-
Those hybrids are
if they're
problematic because actually my husband works for the state of Maryland. He had one in his fleet. It was involved in an accident and it took a year and like $28,000 or $30,000 to have it repaired. Part of the problem was difficulty in getting the replacement battery. So I would be very careful about picking a hybrid.
I'll defer to
Yeah,
Steve.
I would look into the costs, 'cause I'm not sure the return on investment is worth it. I mean, you put an big upfront cost on that, and even just gas mileage, I don't think you get that big of a return. And when you look at it, it takes a long time to get that, to recoup that extra cost.
We've seen some
material
expenses, like if a
costs.
tranny goes out or something like that, that's a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really,
And the maintenance, and the cost if you
it's
get a
really
problem.
sad because it's like, I would love to do that and save on gas, but I am very concerned about if my car is in an accident of some kind. I mean, being out of car for a year is just ridiculous. You can't live like that. So that scares me. I'm just not sure about that. And the costs of it are crazy. So, and you pay a higher upfront cost. And I did this once, the calculation, I'm like, I'm not sure I can live long enough to recoup the cost out of the gas savings. I don't know if it's possible, so I'd be careful with that. And I also would, do we really need to pay the price of an Explorer when an Escape has been fine for 10 years?
I will say that what we need to do to be able to, whenever we have the high school kids working on the gardens, things like that, there's a lot of equipment that has to go in the back of that. Sometimes it's a little tough.
A little tight, okay.
No, this isn't I know we're on some contract where we can purchase these off of, but this is just a regular Explorer, not an Interceptor,
It's
Well,
definitely not the police package.
I mean, then you add the lights and all that stuff, but
Yeah,
it's not the
the
same
police
thing
package.
as the beefed up engine and transmission. It's just a regular run-of-the-mill. Okay.
I mean, I kind of was seeing both sides of the argument. I have a lot of heartburn about replacing a car with the number of miles that it does on it. I know that what I keep going back to is, my car is a 2014 with $90,000 or with 90,000 miles on it. I'm planning on running that thing for another 10 years. That
Right.
being said, I see Commissioner Chismar's, Commissioner Rutledge's points. It's a shame Commissioner Chance isn't here.
I know.
I do think she was in favor of it when we were discussing it, so I think that might be the 3, regardless of what I say.
There you go.
But, you know, I think I tend to be with you about.
I just recently retired a 1994 pickup truck,
Right,
so.
yeah.
So that's okay. It can stay in the budget. You can bring it up.
Right.
If you would like, and depending on how it goes, I'll adjust.
Okay.
Because it will be an impact to the bottom line. It just won't come out. It'll be an $8,000 loss. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it in for now, because it seems like it's 2 to 2.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a problem.
Maybe Commissioner Chance was wise to miss this meeting.
Kevin, I know that we had discussed this a little bit earlier, and I think it's less relevant for the bike lanes on Bolton, because we know that those won't occur for a while. But what, now that the town has made a decision, at least not to move forward with the McPhail connection, will the hospital just build those and there'll be bike lanes on McPhail?
So those are easier because
Right.
they're not
Right.
kind of interrupting they're not in the middle of a section of road.
Sure.
The entire road.
Right.
So it's just doing stuff that's on the east side.
Sure. Okay. I'm sorry, on the east side of.
East side of 24.
Yeah, okay. I thought I heard you say Bolton. I was like, that's a different project, but okay, gotcha. And we've elected to consider the Bolton project later. I mean, if the town decides, depending on what happens at that property, this is really more a procedural question than anything. If the town decides not to move forward with that, would the planning commission be able to amend its decision, or would the developer just put them in where they've been required to put them in?
The hospital, they would.
Mike, turn on your microphone.
I thought you were calling me Mike.
No, that's him.
If the hospital is a planning commission requirement, the Bolton would be counted the zoning administrator's requirement, because that there was a change in how the traffic studies were reviewed between the two.
Okay. So
Now all
there's-
those
got it.
traffic studies are removed by are reviewed by the zoning administrator, because they're all based on numbers.
So that makes it easier then.
It does. It also presents options for what can happen in the future regarding developer exactions
Okay. And then
for Hartford Mall.
Okay. Then one last procedural question I had, it actually popped into my head at the top of the meeting, but I did want to ask, because I can't recall it last year, and this is maybe a Mike question. We're going to have a public hearing on Resolution 1250, which is the tentative budget. We're then going to turn around and have new business item Resolution 1252. Is that going to be a new resolution with the amendments we've come up with here today to adopt? So we're not going to amend Resolution 1250. We're going to just pass and accept and adopt. Adopt is the right word. Resolution 1252, which you will write and the town administrator will write to reflect all the changes we discussed here.
Yes, so
Okay.
Resolution 1252, the final budget will, I'll have listed amendments that you all will read.
Okay, so the actual piece of legislation that will be before us initially will be identical to the tentative budget, and then we will amend 1252 to reflect those amendments.
Yes.
Okay, got
Yep.
it.
1250 will remain the same
Yep.
as
and-
it was.
Yep.
1252 will have the changes in it, and I'll have all those amendments listed out, 1 through 10 or
Yep.
whatever.
And I
whatever it is.
recall reading through those amendments.
Yeah.
I just couldn't recall which piece of legislation they attached to, so
Sure.
thank you. That is
Yep.
very helpful.
Yeah, no problem. The vehicle's staying in, what would you all like to do with the Hartford County Education Foundation?
I think we've got the overhead. Sorry, Steve,
Yeah.
this is your issue.
Yeah, if we have the overhead, I think we ought to bump it back up to their request that we've been giving them in the past for 2,500.
Yep, that's no problem.
I'd be comfortable with 2,500. I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with chaining them to CPI like some of the other places. I think once we get them to what they've asked for,
Right.
I think we can flat fund them in the same way that we're flat funding other organizations like Lassos, because it's not necessarily a town
Right.
event, but they do good work, and I'm happy
Yes.
to give them that. Even though it's not a sponsorship in the way that the Army Alliance is, I'm happy to give them that level of sponsorship.
That's not a problem.
And now that we're almost at the end of our budget discussions for this evening, I did want to point out that I read that University of Maryland is bracing for some serious budget cuts. They are going to eliminate 30 positions that have new people currently in them, and they're going to eliminate another 30 positions. So I think bad news is coming from the state. So wherever we see state money, we may not actually get it. And I know everyone's aware of that, but it was just like a really specific piece of bad news that I read. I'm not sure what news they got that resulted in that.
Based on the comments that I've observed from the Senate President, namely the Senate President, the House Speaker is very quiet, and she has always been very quiet. She doesn't say much in public, and the governor never says bad news, right? So if you're gonna hear bad news, it's gonna be from the Senate President. And in his most recent press conference, the Senate President was looking at, what I'm hearing is that October special session, they are so far saying no revenue measures, we'll see, but that there will be significant looks at state spending, particularly as it relates to Medicaid, which doesn't affect us but is a major hot button issue. My hope is that local government remains shielded, because most of the damage was done this past session, particularly the costs that they pushed back onto the counties. In education, those major blows that they gave the county with the counties without any warning. My hope is that they won't double whammy with another blindside, but we won't know. Most special sessions, the past 10, 20, 30 years, they come in with, technically they can talk about anything, but leadership controls very tightly what's talked about. They come in, they do hearings, they vote, and then they're done. So it's within one business week. It's, they might come in on a Tuesday and be done by Friday, right? So chances are, as we get closer to October, we'll get a better idea of what all is on the chopping block. But for now, it looks like Medicaid is definitely first up for additional cuts. And a lot of that has to do with federal Medicaid funding that looks like it might not come through, and so they're going to have to adjust accordingly.
Thank you for the insights into the workings of the legislature. All right, I think we're finished everything. Lisa, do you have
Almost.
anything? Okay,
Oh, go
almost.
ahead,
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think we still have unresolved the planning commission vehicle, or the planning director's vehicle of 50,000.
Oh, I thought we were gonna leave
No,
it
it's
in.
staying in the budget
Staying in.
for right
'Cause
now,
it's
and
for
then
now.
we can
I
change it
mean,
later.
if Mary doesn't want it or whatever, when the contract comes up,
Right,
it
and
can
I
be
think that's
addressed
what
then,
Lisa's
Yeah, I mean-
saying.
right? Okay,
Yes.
is that what you said before? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it in because it seems like it's a 2-to-2
Right.
discussion. If you all want to bring it up, you can do that Monday night, and then see where it goes from there. I think I would rather that happen than we do the work to procure it, and then you all turn it down. That's just my opinion, though.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
There is, and this really isn't a budget impact, but, number 2, I just wanted to, I told you I would get back to you all this evening on that, answer. So GFOA, so that's the, Government Finance Officers Association, recommends at a minimum, and this is best practices, that governments, regardless of size, maintain unrestricted budgetary fund balance in their general fund of no less than 2 months of regular general fund operating revenues or operating expenditures. The choice on which to use may be dictated by what is more predictable in a government's particular circumstances. And of course, they're talking operations, so you back capital out. I would use, not that the numbers are gonna be that far different, but I would use our expenditures, because it is more predictable on a monthly basis. With regard to revenues, we get our income taxes, our large pieces, only a couple times during the year. So it's not regular. Your expenditures are going to be more regular from month to month. So in doing that calculation, taking the budgetary unrestricted fund balance, backing out all of the reserves, essentially is what that means, is about 2.9 million. So that's what you're shooting to hit. That's your target. If I'm looking at fiscal year '24, so then if I'm comparing FY '24 general fund expenses less, again, all of the capital, we're within $300,000. We're at $2.6 million. I did the same calculation looking at FY '26, we're within $113,000. So, again, it is a best practice ballpark. Certainly, every government is a little bit different, so that gets tweaked here and there. But we're definitely in that ballpark area of 2 months. And I think through the discussions, I had mentioned that, because this reminds me of your personal standpoint, right? You want to make sure that you have enough cash in the bank so that you can fund your expenses should you lose your job or something should happen to you personally, so you can pay for those. This works exactly the same way. And that 2 months was their target as well. So hopefully that answers your question on that perspective.
It does, and it was a good answer because we're right in the ballpark, so
Yep.
that's also good.
Yes, ma'am. That's all I have.
All right.
Well,
Anything else for anyone?
I mean, I have a motion to make if we're done with the
That
budget.
was going to be my next question,
Yes.
just making sure we're done with the budget.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any budget issues?
Just one last thing. Thank you all very much for all the hard work.
Yes.
It's great, fantastic. I mean, overall, the news is very, very good. I think the recommendations have been fantastic, and I want to thank my fellow commissioners and Commissioner Chance in her absence for working so well together and being able to have debates, discussions, and bring things to resolution as we head into the public hearing. So thank you all for that.
What I think has been a great success about this process is that everything that was once somewhat opaque is now, to me at least, completely transparent. So all those items that were confusing and we weren't sure what was going on, we were able to talk through them, and I really appreciated those discussions because I think they brought about an important and much greater understanding of what's going on under the hood with this budget. So I appreciate everyone who participated in those and everyone who prepared things to bring to us, because it certainly is a multi-month process, no doubt about it.
I can't imagine all the grief that everyone went through putting together a budget and hearing Lisa say no. So thank you all for all your hard work, and I am going to, since we're going to go into closed session, only Steve needs to remain, and thank you for being here, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
And
Yep.
Before I make this motion, I'll say for Mr. Krantz, we will not return to public session except to adjourn. Okay. That being said, Madam Chair, I move that this portion of the meeting will be closed under the provisions of the Maryland Open Meetings Act, General Provisions, Article 3, Section 305B1. The topics of discussion will be to discuss the appointment of officials to the town boards, commissions, and committees. The reasons for closed session discussion of the above topics will be because public discussion of candidates' names, qualifications, experience, and background could discourage people from volunteering for public service or compromise their privacy rights.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Commissioner Rutledge. All right.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.